Do the trashy pulp novels of the world have anything to offer? Are bestsellers all they're hyped up to be? The Terrible Book Club explores whether or not you really can judge a book by its cover or its ridiculous synopsis. If you've ever seen a book and thought, ugh, who's reading this? We probably are.
Hello and welcome to episode 100 of the Terrible Book Club. Hooray, we've made it to 3 digits. I'm Chris, and this is Paris.
Hello, welcome.
This time we read They Came With the Snow by...
Christopher Coleman.
Christopher Coleman. I had to bring up the notes there for a second. Can you tell we're streaming on Twitch right now?
So this book appears to be self-published and debuted in 2017. We read this after it was recommended to us by YouTube user AwfulBookClub, a kindred spirit in the realm of reading bad literature. It's also our 100th episode. What have we done?
Hooray!
Hooray!
Yeah.
Hooray, but also what have we done? This is 100 episodes. We've been doing this. Technically, there was a first season in 2015 for about 6 or 7 months. Then we kind of stopped doing it for a year and got back in the terrible book saddle in January of 2017, and we've been running consistently since then. So we're, I guess, 4 full years, just about, in 5 full years? Yeah, 4 full years, yeah. But at the end of this year. Anyway, it's been a long time. 100 episodes. It's a lot of episodes. We just figured it'd be fun to do something a little different for episode 100. So here we are on Twitch for your viewing pleasure or displeasure, your viewing indifference. I'm not really sure how you feel about this.
We still read a book, so it's not that different. But after our book discussion, we will be launching into the inaugural Terrible Book Club Awards. Woo! Hooray!
If somehow this is your first experience of the Terrible Book Club, I guess you chose a good time to start because you're actually getting a video feed. We don't do this a lot. But if this is your first time listening to the show, what we do here is we read books that we assume will be bad, and we make this assumption based on their terrible cover or an awkward summary or something. So typically, we do the opposite of what most people do. Like, you go to a bookstore and you're like, oh, I want to find something I want to read. We walk into a bookstore and go, bring me your worst book. Bring me to your worst book or whatever.
I have done this before.
Chris has done this.
I have really legitimately done this before.
I think that's how we
always get weird looks.
That's how we ended up with the Bookshot and Bitchcraft, right? I think.
Yes. Yeah. Well, no, Bitchcraft I found on my own, just digging through shelves, but that's definitely how we got Killer Chef. So
Bitchcraft was bestowed upon us by Terriblo himself. Terriblo is the Terrible Book God. I've always do that. Terrible Book God whom we serve. Anyway, sometimes though we do read books that are recommended to us. So, we take recommendations from friends, listeners, for people on YouTube, like today. But most importantly, we read books that our patrons ask us to read. I don't think I said any of that right. We read books that our patrons ask us to read sometimes. Today, though, we are reading the selection from a YouTube user, AwfulBookClub. For content warnings today, we have our usual barnyard language. We're a pretty casual podcast in the way that we speak. So there's always some swearing and, things of that nature. But for specific content warnings for the book, we've got some violence and it's got some pandemic-y vibes. So, not quite the same, but it's got some stuff. Some biological warfare might be the better way to put it.
Yeah.
All right. I don't know, Chris, do you want to go down the characters, or do you want me to just start in on this 58-page piece of trash?
There's not a whole lot of substance here, but somehow it's chock full of characters.
So we've got 58 pages. It's It's a novella. It's very short. And yet, in 58 pages, these are all the characters we encounter. Dominic Daniels, the main character. Naya, his student and also his mistress. The crabs, humans mutated into monstrous white primate-esque versions of themselves with a crab-like walk. Tom Godfrey, a diner owner. Danielle, a crab refugee. Greg Godfrey, Tom's son. James, a kid they picked up during an exploration. Alvaro, a guy that works at the diner. Gun, Kanika, and Joe, the Thai Palace owners, the restaurant next door to the diner, who are crabs now. Terry and Stella, diner refugees who are actually evil scientists partially responsible for the crabbening. And then Sharon Daniels, Dom's crab wife. So we've got, what was that, 14 characters?
Sure.
In 58 pages. And given some of them are just kind of there for just a short period, like a sentence or two, or mentioned offhand, but that's a lot for 58 pages. How am I supposed to get to know anyone or give a shit about what you're writing when you're trying to cram as many names into 58 pages as possible? It just doesn't help your cause here. I think it's really, They Came With the Snow is really a modern Penny Dreadful. And as our good friend Ken of the Antiques Freaks would say, the emphasis here is on the dreadful. This is written as a serialized thing. That's why I say it's like a Penny Dreadful, where you can buy the short installment separately from the author. I mean, but again, like none of the characters are real enough to form any attachment to. I would say they don't even rise to the level of cardboard cutout. They're like paper dolls. Like if you can imagine that sort of
pretty much
writing.
They're there to serve like a vague the plot itself. So usually lately we've been trying to summarize what happens in the things we read before we get into any sort of long form analysis of it, just to make sure everyone's, roughly on the same page. So I didn't write one up this time. I'm just going to go off the cuff because, it's 58 pages. I think I could get all this. Let me know if I miss anything here, Paris.
Sure.
So essentially, we start with Dom and Naya, who are locked in themselves. They've locked themselves into the university that Dom teaches at, because after some weird event that happened, it was a little vague on exactly what happened. There was a blast of some kind, maybe some weird noises. And then it started snowing, and there were things outside that were essentially all white, primate-looking things with beady eyes that walked at you like a crab. And so Dom and Naya locked themselves into the university. For some reason, they're by themselves in there. They were caught by themselves in there somehow. They say they've been there for weeks, and they haven't seen anyone else except the crab-like things outside. And when I say crab-like, it's more like white monkey-like. So that's just what the word they use for the monsters. Anyway, they make an escape attempt. They run to across the street where there's some restaurants. They find refuge in one restaurant after Danielle threatens them with a shotgun for sneaking into a truck that's full of food outside. They find the other people that are not crabs. They make an excursion trying to find supplies or other people. And then a bunch of people die at the hands of the crabs that are in the Thai Palace next door. And then they all run away, except when they come back, they find that the two evil scientist people that were amongst the diner refugees are speaking with the army at, like, the outskirts of town, going, yes, 'twas us that did the crabbening.
Yes.
It all went to plan. And then Dom says, you jerks, and runs away.
And
he finds his wife, and he tries to hug her, and it's implied that she tries to kill him.
Correct. Yeah. And then that segues into the next book novella in the series, the melting. Sorry, the melting.
It's just the melting. It's just the normal word.
This book should have been called The Crabbening, because it's very similar to the level of shitty of The Happening, but he calls the monsters crabs. So I don't know. Maybe the wind is a dumber enemy than this, but they're pretty close when it comes to really shitty sci-fi horror ideas. Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
again, it's like, for me too, it's 58 pages and somehow you already figure out the central mystery. Like,
we spend like 20 pages ruminating on Dom's sort of like torrid affair with Naya, and he feels bad about staying with her instead of his wife, but he really doesn't.
He says he does, but it's clear he does not.
He really doesn't. And even though at the end of it, he's like, well, I'm just going to go be with my wife and let her murder me or something. He only does that because Naya is murdered by crabs when he tries to make his way to the restaurant on the other side of the street. You know, I fully expected this to actually be an erotic thing of some kind because the title threw me off a little
They
bit.
came with the snow?
Yeah.
You thought it was going to be like a snow cum joke?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, I can see that. I can see that.
Like, when the snow came, so did we. I don't know. I feel like, you know, if it's this short, 60 pages, I was like, well, I mean, why else would we be reading that? I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing with this is, I mean, if you're really going to write a short piece like this, a short novella, for me, there has to be a character focus, you know, which would mean choosing one or two people, maybe three, so that you can create a reasonable level of interest and attachment with your reader. Like, how am I going to identify with 14 people over 4? Like, why do I care about this story if the only detail I get is that the main character is an adulterous prick? I mean, that's how he's presented. He's not presented in a very forgiving light, though, of course, you know, you're supposed to identify with him, but I don't really know who would. Secondly, like, the scope just needs to be narrowed. If it's not by culling characters, maybe just make this about his and Naya's escape from the university and ending on Naya's death, rather than being all of 2 paragraphs and then cramming the rest of the shit into the final 20 pages. Like, I mean, especially since he's written this as a serialized piece. You can draw it out. It's a penny dreadful. You can just keep people going. And again, if he had just focused on Dom and Naya's time in the school and then their escape and ending in her death, we could have gotten a lot more introspection on his real state of mind. Like, we could have spent more time in Dom's head figuring out how he really felt about this. Did he actually feel remorse? We also could have, I don't know, maybe known anything about how Naya felt, because that's sure as hell not in this fucking thing. We get nothing on Naya's internal monologue, and I just think it actually could have been a compelling character portrait, you know? And there would have been a mystery that people would have wanted to know about, which would have made them purchase the next book.
I feel like the author wanted to get to the big evil scientist reveal in this. Like, that is what the end point climax is Dom stepping outside after the run into Tai Palace and finding the one evil scientist going, yes, the plan went like we wanted to. Please pick me up out of here. And then the military going, no, we're jerks too. See you later, asshole scientist. And that has no build-up, and it's too quick to feel any sense of betrayal when I didn't care about this guy who was in the diner, because I've read about him for 5 pages tops in which he appeared, and he said, yes, I am here too. So there's no twisting there when he was truly the bad guy all along. When, if you're serializing this, like you said, that could have come along later in some other installments.
Yeah,
and could have just settled on Naya and Dom trying to figure out a way to get out of the university while also dealing with, you know, their various guilt about how they ended up here.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a great point, right? Because if the reveal had been later in the series, the author could have spent this time developing trust with these other diner refugees, right? And all along, you would never know that they were actually evil. So the betrayal would feel like a betrayal by the time you got to it, rather than just a scribbled end of this fucking shitty novella. Like, and
it's not like they reveal anything about exactly what was going on here. It's just the scientist talking to some guy in a tank going, yes, we did the test, and now there are crabs. So there's not even any explanation beyond these guys did something. Yeah,
all they know is that, well, the other thing that doesn't make a lot of sense to me is they say when the snow fell, they seem to puzzle out that when the snow fell, everyone who was outside at the time, who was touched by the snow, turned into these crabs. So wouldn't you be afraid of going outside in the snow? Wouldn't you be afraid of getting it on you at all? I mean, obviously, I don't know. I'm guessing it would have to touch your skin, and they're probably wearing outerwear. But like, wouldn't you want to be careful? Because what if when you're taking off your clothes, the snow gets on you, right? There seemed to be no care at all about running around and thrashing about in the snow, even though that's the thing that turned everyone into fucking crabs.
At this point, everyone except Dom and Naya had made excursions out, and I assumed that there was a test run there, so that's why they're not as concerned about it. But yeah, Dom and Naya should have been mildly more concerned about what if we go outside and that's all it takes to get crabbed here. So something that could have been more interesting tension is just left on the table for the reader to think about and no one else.
I mean, and I guess there's a possibility that the way that they've puzzled this out is wrong. Perhaps they are incorrect about, the snow falling on people and causing them to mutate. But I mean, what we're given, it seems like they could have done more with that.
The crabs
concept.
is like a backdrop that was supposed to be more than a backdrop. But it's once again sort of a cardboard cutout of a post-apocalyptic pastiche here. It's just, there's monsters and you got to stay inside. Why or how or anything of that, we're not going to find out now, but we are going to tell you that this guy in the diner was one of the guys that was responsible for it.
Yeah.
You got to the wrong beats too early.
Yeah.
In both Naya's death and the revelation of one of these people was an evil scientist.
Yeah, back to the main character. I mean, the only person you get any perspective from is Dom, the professor, the adulterous professor. And I don't know, once again, I know we say this a lot, but we say it a lot because it's so common. I don't want to read another story about a presumably white, male, middle-aged professor who women seem to drool over because there's,
why is that a character?
I don't know.
All the time.
Male power fantasies are just very, very common in literature, even in things like this, even in pulp stuff. And it's it's just a bummer. Like, it would have been a lot more effective again if we had been in Naya's head. Maybe if we even cut to his wife's inner monologue, and I'm sure that she had some suspicions about what was going on, or the other people. I mean, it's very...
I mean, Dom sucks.
Bland. Yeah, he
His
sucks.
whole thing was like, wow, I sure was cheating on my wife, but I swear to God, I love her. I want to be with her.
But then he's
she is crabbing.
But yeah, and he's very dismissive of Naya. The whole affair, he's like, well, a lot of co-eds are hot, but Naya, she really pursued me, and like that's why, it was easy to have the affair. And he talks about it. It's super sleazy, and it just does not endear you to the main character at all. I mean, and there are ways to write, an adulterous male professor that might make you feel some level of sympathy for him. If there were extenuating circumstances, if he really wrote about his remorse, but, Naya gets fucking ripped apart by crabs and he's like, too bad. Anyway, so we're gonna go get some meat, right? Like, we're going out right now. Like, it's just on a dime. He's also
immediately flirting with the lady that pointed a shotgun at him earlier. So, he's like, a male character cannot be undesired, Paris.
No, they have to be very desirable. Be terrible. And all women must flirt with them. They must also flirt back with all women. If not, they are an undesirable cuck, as you put it in your notes.
Can't let that happen.
No, can't. Why would anyone like this main character if he wasn't sexy and morally dangerous? I mean, at least we don't get any gratuitous descriptions of anyone. It's not like his rippling biceps or her voluminous breasts or anything like that, I will say I did appreciate that. I appreciated there was no sex scenes or like anything that went too over the line. It was pretty focused on the action. You were never, we never spent too much time on anything else, which is weird. I guess it's kind of a catch-22 here, right? Because we're like, hey, this story should have gone into more detail, but at the same time, it does its job of being a short form pulp piece, right? I just don't think it's very good. My big question is, like, if we're talking about, would you recommend this? Of course not. Why the hell would anyone read this when you could watch a TV show or movie with a similar but much better premise in little more time than it takes to read 58 pages? Like, you could watch The Strain, which has actually kind of a similar looking monster, but a much better premise.
Not exactly like high cinema or anything either,
no. But I'm saying, like, if you're looking for something pulpy but decent. Like, you could watch The Strain. You could, I mean, hell, you could even, I mean, you could watch
Walking Dead's a thing that exists.
I've never seen it, but you could watch The Thing. And I mean, the remake's okay, the original's best, but, you know, an incredible movie with a similar premise about, you know, people being terrified of this new disease in a snowy environment, and there's a lot of betrayal, and it's horrifying. You know, God, watch The fucking Thing. Don't read this. Furthermore, if you're like, I don't want to watch something, I really want to read something, there's plenty of other horror sci-fi short stories that are so much better. Here's a list. All right, if you're looking for a horror sci-fi short story, don't read They Came with the Snow. Read one of these. Read Exhalation by Ted Chiang, Night Flyers by George R.R. Martin, The Time and Variance of Snow by E. Lily Yu, Who Goes There by John W. Campbell, which is actually the text that The Thing is based on. You can also read In Xanadu by Levi Tidhar. So any of those. Yeah, The Thing is awesome.
There's so many options. There's so many options.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's just like a list of 5 that I kind of just... actually, some of those are some that I'm looking... I actually want to read this holiday break. I want to read The Time and Variance of Snow and Who Goes There, because I've never actually read the text that inspired The Thing, and that's so cool to me. But there's just... I mean, there's, of course, even if horror sci-fi isn't your thing, there's plenty of short stories you could read that aren't this.
This one really reads like a creative writing assignment that got maybe cooked up and turned in 2 days before it was due. And it might be fine as like a C, you know, in that class where you're like, okay, you got something here, but, you know, let's not jump immediately into the revelation of evil scientists and not dwell on, you know, it just feels very kind of by the numbers y, and then the reveal at the end makes me feel like, what, you know, in the next part of the series, what's even the conflict going to be besides, I guess, trying to find out a little bit more about what happened
and finding food and that stuff. Yeah.
Anyway, not interesting when there's plenty of other sci-fi stories that did that already way better.
Yeah. So that's They Came with the Snow by Christopher Coleman. We're not into it. Needs a lot of help.
We want to do a quick one for this because we think we're going to spend a lot more time on this segment of episode 100. Welcome to the inaugural Terrible Book Club Awards, where we do a sort of retrospective on every single book we're not going to talk about every single book we've read. But we've cooked up some categories here, and we've nominated, you know, a varying array of books depending on what we felt fit into the category. It was free nomination between Paris and I. And we're going to approach this with the same method that Giant Bomb uses for their Game of the Year awards. I really like their format that they do, in which we have a list of nominations in the category. And once we've named all those, we just start cutting things off, you know, for whatever we feel doesn't fit or deserve an award in this category until we have at least 3 left. And then we name the one that wins the award, with the other 2 as just unordered runners-up, you could say.
I think that's a good system. I'd also like to thank all of you, listeners and patrons, for contributing to help us figure out these categories. We've got some really fun ones that people suggested. And once we're done with the Terrible Book Club Awards, we're also going to answer some questions that were submitted by listeners, patrons, and some that Chris and I just dreamed up sort of for each other. So this is section 2 of episode 100, the Terrible Book Club Awards. All right, our first category, Chris. You want to take it away?
Sure. Our first category is biggest surprise. No. So this is anything that, you know, just sort of was most unexpected or turned out in a way we didn't expect it. That doesn't necessarily mean the best, but just something that, you know, turned out differently, let's say. The nominees are Universal Harvester, Bear, Zarstor's Bane, Demon Pig, A Spectre is Haunting Texas, Swamplandia, The House in the Dark of the Wood, The Secret of Moonlight, and The Haunted Vagina.
So, all right, I'm going to actually request an immediate cull. I think we can get rid of A Spectre is Haunting Texas because it had a lot of things I was expecting in it. Sure, it had some I didn't, but there were others on the list that were way more surprising to me.
I could, you know, to me, it was just because the description on the back was so out there and bizarre that I was expecting it to be way more trashy than it was. And, like, to be clear, it was indeed a very pulpy, trashy kind of thing with this, you know, man from Mars who was very thin in his suit, basically hitting on anything that moved and like acting his way into cultural revolution in like future Texas.
Yes.
But that came out better than I thought it would, which is why I included it on this list. But I would also definitely, seeing all the other things on this list.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Since I just suggested a cull, what do you think could go?
Okay. I might go for removing Swamplandia in that case.
Okay.
I kind of expected that to be something decent instead of some, like, again, this was a case of where the back of the book summary where it was like, this takes place in like a gator theme park. And I thought it was going to be something weirder than it was, but it was a pretty decently thought out.
I loved it. I loved that book for
story.
a lot of reasons. Yeah, Swamplandia was great. I'll agree with you because I didn't know anything about it, and I just thought, I was like, I'm not gonna be able to identify. I was like, I'm not gonna be able to identify with this at all, and then I very strongly identified with one of the main characters, and it was just, it had beautiful. I know people joke about the similes in Swamplandia. There's even a Twitter dedicated to all the similes in Swamplandia, but the descriptive writing, including those maligned similes, I think were just incredible, and there were some things about the book that I thought were a little odd, but overall it was excellent. I've recommended people read it as a result. So yeah, I was surprised by how much I liked it, but it did meet my expectations for like wacky Gator Florida family. So
Wacky
it wasn't
Gator Florida family,
wacky Gator Florida family.
Okay. Wacky Gator Florida family.
All right.
The dynamics real messed up. Florida family.
Oh, good. We didn't plan that, by
okay.
the way. We never plan these like weird fucking sing-alongs that happen. All right. Let's see. I'm gonna say Demon Pig can be taken off. It was a surprise, but it contained everything I expected it to contain. It was just a little more artful.
I might cut Zarstor's Bane for the same reason, honestly.
Yeah.
Where it was like they were both these pretty decent fantasy things that, Zarstor's Bane.
Zarstor's Bane is better. It's better than Demon Pig. It's way better.
I would say that too. That was just decent fantasy that wasn't totally by the numbers.
I love Zarstor's
Demon Pig was sort of by the numbers, but with the silliness of animal protagonists helping it
and some self-awareness that made it fun. But yeah, I'd call those two just because I think for biggest surprise, we're really looking for something that just turned us on our heads. Like it wasn't just a little what we didn't expect, but just totally not at all. So I'll get rid of that one.
Okay, we're down to 5 already here.
Okay. Secret of Moonlight, I'd get rid of because that was exactly what I thought it was. Because I expected...
Was it though? Yeah. So I'm going to put up my first fight here, actually.
All right, Chris.
For Gloria Tesh, of all people.
I mean...
In which I think she did do a little bit better.
Yeah. I expected it to be better.
And I was surprised by that. I was surprised by the fact that it was a little bit better.
No, I wasn't because
it was not great.
No, Chris, this is why it's not surprising. Because we knew her father was out of the picture. And we knew that he was responsible for how broken the English was. I hate to say it this way, but it's the truth. It was very obvious that her father, or maybe her father and mother, who were both kind of older immigrants to the U.S., were responsible for the text being poorly written because they apparently didn't consult any editors. And I mean, it just was written in a way that clearly even a child didn't write, just for syntax and grammar reasons. So knowing that he was no longer involved, I expected it to be better. I didn't expect it to be great, and it indeed wasn't great, but it was better. It was an improvement. It was very much what I expected it to be. I don't think I was expecting the Viking stuff, but I was expecting, mermaid story.
I mean, I would say, here's the thing. I would say The Secret of Moon Lake was more surprising than The House in the Dark of the Wood to me.
I don't think so at all. No.
Okay, so The House in the Dark of the Wood, I saw when we read the summary for that it would be sort of this darker fairy tale sort of thing. And I kind of got what I paid for, or what I bargained for in that. And, I wasn't expecting it to be drastically bad.
Yeah.
Just to me, the margin of improvement in The Secret of Moon Lake was a bigger surprise to me than what I read on the back of The House in the Dark of the Wood and then proceeded to read. I this isn't a value judgment on
Yeah.
the quality of each book. It's just in terms of my expectation. I would rather cut The House in the Dark of the Wood, perhaps even Universal Harvester, before I cut The Secret of Moon Lake from Biggest Surprise.
Yeah, I mean, The House in the Dark of the Wood, I expected it to be like rambly trash based on, the recommendation, and I ended up really loving it because I don't know, I'm a sucker for dark fairy tales, and I just think that the way that the topic, the way that like, sort of colonial medieval woods witches were addressed in this book was very different from what is typically a very tired cliche. So for me it was surprising in that way, but I will agree with you that it wasn't as surprising as I thought, but not I mean, Secret of Moon Lake to me just wasn't surprising at all.
Okay, so let's focus on another part of this list to see if we can cull, because then Universal Harvester. While I was surprised sort of by how much I liked it, I don't think I would be surprised by sort of the quality coming from it.
Yeah, I think we can get rid of that one because I was surprised. Yeah, it was more of a mild surprise.
Where I was like, okay, well, this guy is a well-renowned lyricist for an indie folk kind of outfit. And so you would kind of expect him to be somewhat decent based on that. I mean,
and I expected it to be like a seedy Twin Peaks kind of thing, and it was. So yeah, we can get rid of Universal Harvester.
All right, yeah. So so now we're down to 4 here. Which is
this is hard.
The Haunted Vagina, Secret of Moon Lake, House in the Dark of the Wood, and Bear.
I'm gonna cling to Bear and the Haunted Vagina. I'm just gonna cling.
I think that's top 2 material. Yeah, honestly.
I agree.
And now we're just fighting for the third spot here between the House in the Dark of the Wood and the Secret of Moon Lake.
Fuck.
Which is a tough third. Or at least runner up. I don't want to actually put any value judgment on whether what came in second or third.
Yeah, that's fine. So which I don't know if anyone's listening and they have any arguments we haven't considered, please feel free to drop them in the Twitch chat. But I guess when I'm thinking biggest surprise, I'm thinking just wholly not what we expected. And for me, again, The Secret of Moon Lake was almost exactly what I expected. Because again, Gunther Tesch was out of the picture, so Gloria was writing on her own. So I was like, well, it'll probably be a little better. I didn't think it was going to be great. I know I already said this, and it was about, a mermaid thing. I guess I didn't really expect the Viking sort of horror-ish element, but it made sense given what we know of her interests and her previous work. I just don't think it was
especially the mermaid stuff.
I just don't think it was so radically. It would be a big surprise if it was an excellent novel. Then it would certainly win big surprise, but it wasn't. It wasn't even. It was, again, we're talking in relative terms here. It was better than Maradonia. Quite a bit better than Maradonia, I would even say, but that still doesn't make it. I don't know. It wasn't.
I don't think I'm willing to put up too much of a fight on Gloria Tesch's behalf here. So I think we can cut our top 3 here for this category down.
All right. Still a surprise, but not as big of a surprise given what we knew.
So now we have to talk about.
All right. House in the Dark of the Wood is third, obviously. I think, and then All right. So it's up to.
We can talk about the Haunted Vagina and Bear here, which somehow both
heavy on the vagina,
erotic stuff.
Heavy on the
somehow
vagina.
Yeah.
This is hard because you know what this is difficult because Bear and the Haunted Vagina were both so much different than we expected. I mean, what we're going into both of them knowing there was going to be surprising and horrifying sexual content in vastly different ways. We knew that
there's skeletons inside a whole world in a vagina, and in the other one, someone's being intimate with a bear. So different kinds of horror there.
Yeah, very different.
Although decidedly, Bear is not written as a horror story.
No. Bear is I recommend you read Bear. Actually, it's an excellent novella. It's only 100 and something page, or maybe a little more than a novella, but it's a short book. It's certainly not. It's not an easy read, but it's a heartfelt one and a good one that really got to me. That book. So, God, God, yeah, this is so fucking hard.
The Haunted Vagina should have been way more of a train wreck than it was.
And
Paris.
it wasn't. It wasn't at all.
It's definitely so bizarre in like a lot of ways, but it's a sort of creative bizarre. It is definitely specifically put out there as like, yo, this is, bro, you want something weird? It's not trying to like be more than it is. It's, the marketing behind it was explicitly like, yo, this is some weird shit, man. It's not supposed to be necessarily thought-provoking. It's just bizarre fiction.
But it kind of ended up being thought-provoking. I mean, the author created these very believable characters in an unbelievable world, and it was surprisingly real for something that was so wacky.
So unreal in a way.
Yeah.
Because you have people crawling inside of another person's body and finding a whole world in there.
Yeah.
You know, like being John Malkovich, except the tunnel is a vagina.
And I know it sounds really weird that we're arguing for this being decent, but you know, it's like Chris said, it's very upfront about the type of thing you're getting into, this bizarro fiction, and that it's heavily, you know, sexual, but the sex stuff wasn't even, I feel like it was handled so much better. I am saying this, a man literally spelunking into a vagina and having adventures was somehow handled better than most of the books. Oh, God.
Yeah, knowing us being like sex scene averse, it was written as really gross and weird.
Yeah.
Because it was what was happening.
Oh,
and maybe that's what like made it palatable for us in some weird way.
Sinya in the chat says, also quite surprising that a brewery had guest rooms. Yeah, you're right. That was a hilarious, weird thing. Like a brewery hotel? Like not a hotel with a brewery, but a brewery with some sketchy motel rooms. I kind of want more of that.
I have seen that on Airbnb though, Paris. I've seen that on Airbnb. I
mean,
after that, so you know, maybe this inspired people somehow.
Maybe someone was like, "Yo, I read Carl Milk III. He's got ideas."
Okay, so I guess in comparison to Bear,
God,
were you more surprised that Bear was good than The Haunted Vagina was good?
No, I was more surprised that The Haunted Vagina had redeeming qualities. I
might agree with you there, Paris. So we might have found our first award receiver.
All right,
on the Terrible Book Club Awards. Then,
all right, biggest surprise.
Are you willing to lock in that with me?
Yeah,
here?
let's just do it because we got a lot of categories.
Sure. I don't. You know. Congratulations to The Haunted Vagina.
Carl Milk III, you were our biggest surprise.
Our
so
first
far.
award winner, the biggest surprise out of 100 books that we've read, maybe more than that at this point.
And with the runner-up, The Wonderful Bear, a book I do recommend you read. Strangely, I wouldn't recommend The Haunted Vagina unless you really want to read some fucking weird shit.
You really gotta be looking for something that is completely out there.
All right, well, let's hear it for The Haunted Vagina, Bear, and The House in the Dark of the Wood. Yay, our biggest surprises. You know what? Weirdly, those are all from the last 2 years. The last year and a half.
Sure. I mean, it's, considering how far back we're reaching here, we're probably just going to end up having better memories about things like this. And who knows when we start doing this, the next time we come around to this, maybe it'll be a little bit more often so we don't have to think about that. But
all right.
Speaking of bizarre, let's go into the next category, which is probably one of the ones I've been most looking forward to, Paris.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. Would you like to present this one?
Sure. I'm Paris from the Terrible Book Club, here to present the nominees for the category of Most Insane Unholiest Abomination. Our nominees are The Eclipse of Darkness, I'm Living But I'm Not Alive, The Virus of Desire, Growing Around, the Maradonia series in its entirety, The Haunted Vagina, Selfie Showdown, Mazeppa the Wolfhound, Moon People 1 and 2, and The Stain of Time version 2, More Than a Trent Reznor Biography, a true gem in the TBC back catalog. Oh. This is, we may have, it's going to take a long time.
What a season, what a series of competitors, Paris. This is going to immediately, just cutting from the bottom here is going to be pretty tough, I would say.
All right, the most unholy, or the unholiest abomination. The most unholy abomination. I think that's the better way to. Yeah. So okay.
Yeah.
So and for this, we're considering like just totally. I already know what is number one in my heart.
Really?
Yeah.
You're being very strong about this already.
But I also know what number 2 is for me, and number 3.
Oh, wow. Coming out the gate, do you want to start from that end, or do you want to just try to cut from the bottom?
All right.
Okay,
number
Paris.
1's got to be the Eclipse of Darkness, Chris. That broke
Paris.
you as a person.
It really did snap my brain in half in a way that I was unprepared for from all angles, I would say.
It was utter madness. If you have not listened to episode 50, the Eclipse of Darkness was submitted to us. It was an anonymous submission. The person wanted to...
Which just makes it scary.
Yeah. Yeah, the person wanted to be anonymous because of their association with the person who wrote it. And so we got this anonymous recommendation. I'm like, all right, let's check this out. And I'm like, the art's weird. It was just like this very, very steep ski slope of bizarreness. Like, once you notice one thing, you're like, oh, that's weird. Oh no. Oh God.
You're starting with the cover, and then you're getting into the weird intros that say, get ready for the most mind-bending thing. Okay, we're starting the story now.
It's starting.
And then you get to the insane factory where the main character works with nuclear explosion posters and electric chairs that are being made with crowns of thorns and cushions, and then you're into the other world out of evolution, and then you hit Nixon Man, and then we hit the 2 monks with the dream machine.
Oh, and then there's the ostrich man that just makes cameos throughout the book, and we have no idea what that was about. Also, this wasn't a book, it was a screenplay, but since Chris and I had no experience reading screenplays, I actually reached out to the screenwriters of Reddit, who were lovely, by the way. I think our screenwriting, or screenwriters, they were great. I was like, hey, we're a podcast, I explained, and I was like, well, someone recommended this to us, but we don't really understand what a screenplay is supposed to be. Our initial impression is that this is batshit insanity, but we just want to make sure that we're not wrong. And everyone was like, yo, a screenplay is supposed to be like a handful of pages. Like, even for a full movie, screenplays are pretty short. Like, they were like, I don't know what this is. People were horrified. And I was like, okay.
Like, what have you done? Why have you put this here?
Yeah, I was like, thanks.
And they took it in stride.
They
so
did. They were lovely. Screenwriters of Reddit. Thanks a lot. But that one, I mean, it was a screenplay, not a book. There were the grammar, the writing was weird, and you could tell it was earnest, which made it kind of sad because it was so strange.
I still don't quite understand the point the book was trying to make.
God
Even
batteries.
now, having thought about
God
battery, and also we're bad because we live in evolution.
Yes,
and that is bad.
Correct. I don't really know how we're supposed to not live.
There's another world out there that we're supposed to tap into with all the demons.
The unseen world, right? Was that what
and the evil Bronic man is doing something.
The evil, Bronic man. We don't know what Bronic. We still have no idea.
No, the word was Evo.
Evo Bronic. Evo Bronic. Yes, Evo Bronic. So I mean, we've got everything. We got made up words, confusing, insane plot, no clue what the real point is, strange character names and descriptions, over-sexualization of female characters. I mean, it's really, the Eclipse of Darkness is the number one unholy abomination.
I think in my heart, too, that's always been the truth, because that's the one I always kind of recommend to people when they're like, okay, but what should I start with? And I'm like, if you can handle episode 50, you can hang with us for nearly anything.
Yeah. And then my number 2 is actually...
Here's where we're fighting for the runners-up at this point. Yeah.
So my number 2 is actually The Stain of Time, version 2, More Than a Trent Reznor biography, because that's about a real-ass person. And this author wrote a biography of Trent Reznor, but the author claims, this woman claims that, I'm trying to remember exactly that.
He's a body-hopping demon that is reincarnated.
No, he's not a demon. He is a reincarnation of previous people, and she says that she got all this information by talking to a demon through a pendulum. I mean, it's one thing if you have a made-up story that's kind of nuts, but like taking this real person's life and being like, they're a reincarnation, I found out because I talked to a demon through a swinging rock. Okay, well, that's a little much. So to me, that's number 2. Nothing can top
then by
that.
by the same thing, isn't Mazeppa the Wolfhound even crazier?
No, because it had a lot of real facts in it. We just didn't know because they were written poorly.
There's some real despite the fact that it's about an immortal dog and woman who raised an immortal dog and caused these dogs to, like, all of the dogs of the Salukis from all existence were created by this one woman and her immortal dog.
But here's the thing.
That she breastfed?
Hey, you can breastfeed dogs. We found this out, remember? We were really wrong. The author was like, you're wrong about everything. We were like, fuck, I guess you're right.
This was the guy that, in Facebook comments, decided to catalog everything he thought was factually incorrect with our analysis. Even the stuff that was, he was very convinced about this immortal woman, I'm pretty sure, Paris, like... I think he was fully on board with that part.
No, I don't think he was. It just seemed like he was in the text of the book, and we were confused by that. He was like, oh, no, that's just fiction. I'm like, well, you wrote about it like it was real, though. So, anyway, to me, the Crazy Dog lineage book, I don't think it's as bad because it's not claiming that anyone in existence now is a part of this, like...
True. But, I don't even know how much in terms of Unholiest Abomination I care about, like, them selling that this is a real angle. Because then you have stuff like the Virus of Desire, which is also almost as equally brain-twisting as the Eclipse of Darkness
that's automatically disqualified because it was intended to be that way. When things are intentionally that way.
I don't think that disqualifies it, though, because if you still get something that jumps from anime fan fiction into, like, the literal embodiment of the coronavirus, trying to romance someone, and then also random scenes between, like, Chinese characters that have no bearing whatsoever on what's going on.
Yeah, but...
And then business meetings, like, with coronavirus attending, and...
Yeah, but this didn't come from a real... we know it's AI written. I mean, the author reached out to us. I just don't think that qualifies because we're trying to find things that are unintentionally crazy. Like, I think I don't think unintentionally is part of this category for me, Paris. So, you know what? Let's cast our gaze upon some of these other ones. See if they're an easier cut. All right.
Like Moon People 1 and 2. Like, that's crazy, but it's not as crazy as like, that's out there. And it's very Mary Sue in a lot of places.
Yeah, and it's poorly written, but it's not like, it's not.
Despite the microwaving Mars idea to create new life, which is by far the most out there thing.
I think it's also presented as fiction, so like, it's not as
true.
Nuts.
You know what? Let's remove that from the running. Like, same thing with like growing around.
I'm gonna take out Haunted Vagina because I don't think we should. We just awarded it.
It's definitely unholy in a way.
And it's an abomination of sorts, but it's a weirdly
I think that's
welcoming
another case
abomination.
Of the intention being, and if I'm like letting intention come through, then I would rather take the Virus of Desire over that one in terms of unholiness.
Okay, so we'll get rid of.
I would rather drop that.
Okay, that's fine. I also think I'm Living But I'm Not Alive was bad, but it followed like regular story beat stuff.
There was coherence there.
Yeah.
It was very poorly edited and had a lot of hilarious lines.
That's the one where the editor actually reached out to us and was like, you should read this because this guy asked me to edit this and he almost didn't pay him and he would just reject all of the edits that he made and it was this crazy thing. But yeah, I don't think doesn't rise to the level of Unholy Abomination.
Some of these other things over here.
So
then we've got Selfie Showdown kind of by the same
that is really
stock.
insane. Yeah, that's crazy. Because that also involves...
That's just heavily misogynist more than like unholy, I would say.
Yeah, it's a very weird take on... feminism.
Yeah.
It's this man, I don't know if
women are still sex objects, but because they can fight each other, that's pro-women
because they can
somehow.
fight each other while being sexy.
Yes.
They're an elevated form of woman.
Yeah.
It's a very strange. I mean, if listeners or watchers, if you've never listened to that episode, it's an odd one. I don't know how we found that one. I think someone recommended it to us.
I found it, I think, because like the author would release a bunch of the pieces with a bunch of different covers of random women on the cover, basically to just attract someone who was horny.
Well, no, his whole deal was that he's also a photographer and he's trying to make this into a movie. He has audio CDs. I mean, you could look it up and presumably buy these things. So he pays women to model for him, but I mean, he doesn't really have the eye, if you ask me, for photography.
Yeah.
And I guess that's my opinion, but I think that most people would be in agreement that even if you're taking sexy, suggestive photos, you can do it in a way that's artful, perhaps even has lighting and isn't just your backyard and a fence.
Yeah,
I don't know.
These look like quick, social media shots that probably wouldn't even rise to the cream of the crop on like Instagram posts.
Yeah, and he hires all these women routinely to try to start making films of these ideas to create this sort of media empire of, I forget what it's called.
What is
It's called,
with these authors and like multimedia like things when they can't even get one medium straight?
Yeah, that's definitely a mistake we've seen made time and again. It's like, just focus your craft on one thing at a time. You can't be making, audio CDs and movies and books and screenplays, and it's just...
In terms of like, this is a side note from here, but the one person out of the catalog that we've read that was sort of successful at that, and that's stretching the idea of successful, was Rich Shapiro.
Oh yeah. I mean,
because his books were like semi-coherent, and like the music that went along with it was like palatable in a way.
I mean, it's not for me, but I could see how someone else could like it. Yeah. I mean, and also Rich Shapiro got better over time. I'm actually surprised that we didn't talk about Too Far when we were talking about surprises, but anyway, I think you're right. He does it, he at least, there's effort there. His website looks okay. He's definitely committed some book sins. It's pretty grievous book sins.
Should we throw Wild Animus into the unholiest abomination consideration here while we're on Rich Shapiro?
Fuck.
But like, not really, I would say, like, it would immediately get cut in comparison to some of this other stuff, too.
Well, I think we also just didn't include anything from the Lost episodes, and Wild Animus is a Lost episode. So
true, but, like, worth bringing up momentarily here.
Actually,
if someone has Wild Animus...
I'm putting it under most toxic message.
Sure, actually, yeah, let's...
Yeah. Anyway, or most disappointing character arc.
Yeah, we can maybe get to that, but let's finish up this category here. Okay, so how about Growing Around?
Oh, that one's bad, but it's bad in the way that it's terrible for children and not... Yeah. It's bad for its intended audience, but
it's not completely out there.
I think the
some
author...
of the consequences of the world are...
Yeah, like the author had good intentions, and he tries.
Yeah, tries. There's more... and even though there's a lot of like plot holes and logical inconsistencies, there's less than in some of these other ones.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't even like put it on third in comparison to like, I would rather have the Virus of Desire before I had.
Yeah, let's take off Growing Around, because I think we're going to talk about that one more in the next one. Sure. So
we should also take Selfie Showdown out while we're at it at this point.
Really? You want to take Selfie Showdown out?
I mean, do you really think that's it, like... That again, there's some mild coherence to it. It's just Mortal Kombat, but with sexy ladies.
Yeah,
and like a really misogynist plot,
and really poorly done.
It's the editing and the proofreading that is the most unholy part of that, more than the whole package.
I don't know. All right, fine.
Would you either have like Mazeppa the Wolfhound over that or something?
No, I think. Yeah, I'd rather take Mazeppa the Wolfhound out.
Okay, you know what? Yeah, all right, fine. I guess I would take that out.
All right, so I'm still gonna fight hard for the Virus of Desire being culled. I'm happy leaving Maradonia and Selfie Showdown as unholy abominations because...
Oh, okay, yeah, we're fighting for third again here, really. Because I still have...
I don't know if Maradonia...
Your number two... It's really the conception of how that was created that is more wild than anything else.
No, but it's also wild because it includes. It's like, so if you've never listened to that episode, I actually don't remember what number it is. It might be 38, 37. I think it might be 37. Not sure. You can check on the website. But it volleys between chapters about, following basic facts of Trent Reznor's life, like where he grew up and where he worked and blah, blah, blah. And then the next chapter will be like, 1648, France. Claude is in love with his cousin, Pierre, or whatever. And it turns into this, and you're like,
that's
what
true.
What is she talking about?
Like, through line between a lot of those things, except that apparently someone was having a shared reincarnated existence.
Yeah, and then someone gets like lit on fire at the end, and
was
like
very
pregnant.
Unclear.
There is something about that's wild beyond just having a bad fiction idea, because again, it's like serious.
Okay, it's definitely in the top 3 then.
Yeah.
But okay, so Maradonia then.
Maradonia, I think Maradonia had a lot of misguided people.
Yeah.
I don't.
And there's a lot of random shit in there popping up, like oracle frogs, also, all kinds of evil demons that are, whose powers are never really fully explained on exactly what they can do and what they can't do. The cold light waves will forever stay with me as... I don't even understand what was happening there.
Cold
was
light waves.
Supposed to be laser beams? Or
yeah, probably lasers. I think. Wait, are lasers hot?
Lasers hot?
Are lasers hot or cold? Not sure. Did not.
All right,
check
you go
on
get
that.
a laser pointer, shine it on your skin for a couple minutes, and see what happens.
I know can't go in your eyes. That's not good. They will blind you.
Bad. It's hot on the eyes.
Yeah. So. I just think Maradonia isn't. I also just think it's not. Again, it's like people with good intentions just... I guess it's in the background is an abomination, right? Because you have these two parents just like using their daughter as a prop and stringing her along in these crazy lies and sort of turning her into an unwitting charlatan, which is very just evil. But again, I don't think the parents were intending to be bad, to be evil, right? Like they thought they were doing a good thing. And the series is bad, but it's paint by numbers fantasy run through bad Google Translate. Like that's kind of all it is.
I can agree.
So I don't think that deserves the most unholy abomination. I'm gonna remove that.
Sure, you know what? I won't fight too hard. So that basically means it's between the Selfie Showdown and the Virus of Desire in terms of unholiest abomination. I would rather go with the Virus of Desire for this.
Chris, you know what? We gotta get in this barbed wire cage and fight it out.
You're really going to bat for Selfie Showdown?
I am, because I think, again, my whole thing is like, the Virus of Desire is crazy, but it was meant to be that way. And it was made, curated AI garbage. Anyone can do that.
So you're going like Selfie Showdown is a little bit more like free range, organic, legitimate wildness.
Yes, our authors get the most grass to run around on here at Selfie Showdown. And remember the author sent us this ranting message that we just never replied to because it was so long. We just were like, he was like, I'm going to become a patron. And we were like, yeah, okay. And of course he never did.
But then he didn't.
Of course not. I think, and again, we try not, we have a policy of, not responding to things like that because what does it matter? But, I just think that the whole idea of like, I'm going to create a media empire of tricking young women looking to get into modeling to take pictures for me and then try to make them be in movies. And by the way, it seems like the movies don't ever really become anything. I think they're just a bunch of scenes not cut together, just back to back. I mean, it's difficult to determine, and we didn't want to spend any more money investigating this, so it just seems especially crazy to me.
I guess we're talking about the difference between intention upon making versus the result, whereas the Virus of Desire, the result is more wild. but the intention isn't. Whereas with Selfie Showdown, it's like the intent and creation and backstory is far more wild.
I mean, I still think the result is pretty fucking insane too. Don't get me wrong. Selfie Showdown. I mean, Selfie Showdown...
It's more coherent than Virus of Desire.
Yeah, but again, Virus of Desire wasn't written by a person.
It is pretty close. It is pretty close, and kind of like the randomness of scenes. So you know what, Paris? Fine.
Thank you, Chris.
I mean, we're fighting for third here isn't as important as like really, highlighting the true winner of this category, the Eclipse of Darkness.
Oh, seriously.
Which is but far and away, if you want to hear some out there ideas, check out episode 50. I would not recommend reading that book by yourself unless like you have like a trip guy, like someone like a trip babysitter for you to like just make sure you're doing okay as you go through it, which is what we were doing for each other as we read through that thing essentially.
Yeah, I would actually be wary of ingesting the Eclipse of Darkness while under the influence of any substance because you might start to be very confused about what is real and what is not.
Do not.
All right, so let's give it up for Most Unholy Abomination, the Eclipse of Darkness.
Hooray! Congratulations.
Number 2, The Stain of Time, and number 3, Selfie Showdown. All right.
Congratulations.
Oh man.
We still got categories here, Paris.
I know. I'm just organizing. I'm cleaning up this document.
Okay. While you're doing that, I can present our next category.
All right.
The next category is Most Toxic Message.
Oh god, this is gonna be hard.
The nominees are Hoe Tactics, Growing Around, The Sword of Truth series, Woman Worship, The Silent Patient, Ma, Can I Be a Feminist and Still Like Men, and Wild Animus.
Okay, all right. I think we can call... I need to plug my laptop in. I think we can call... Woman Worship. Get ready for this very wonderful segment of Paris needs to plug the laptop in. Yeah, I think we can call Woman Worship and Ma, Can I Be a Feminist and Still Like Men. Those are my initial feelings.
Like they're not as toxic. I only put Ma, Can I Be a Feminist up there just because the title there seems pretty self-explanatory in terms of like, yes, you can.
That's
of course
true.
You can.
That's true.
There's reasons to not like men, plenty of, I will say, but to roundly cut that off. And it wasn't all the way in that camp, I would say either. But at the same time,
it definitely has
worth a nod in this category.
I agree. This is very.
So maybe cut that and Woman Worship. While it's very hard to plug. Putting women on a pedestal here, let's say, in a way that can't be healthy. Isn't as bad as some of the other things that we've seen here in terms like he just really thinks that lame poetry is the way to prove your love.
Yeah,
like really lame poetry.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, but I don't think. If anything, I think that the author tries to be like, hey, you should love, you should stick with your woman, love her no matter what she looks like now, even if she's a little chubbier or a little shorter than she used to be or whatever, shrinking grandma.
The toxicity there is the level of like, deification almost that we get to.
Yeah. Yeah. And also,
because women are people too.
Yeah, the toxicity there is that there's no nuance. Women are just glorious goddesses and untouchable, and you just should worship them, as the title suggests. And while I think that you should worship your partner regardless of their gender affiliation. Should be called partner worship. Is what it should be called.
All right. So let's cull Woman Worship and Ma, Can I Still Be a Feminist from this list for now.
I agree. They're not nearly as horrifying as...
I think at that point we can cast our gaze upon The Silent Patient.
Ooh, yeah. Silent Patient had just a lot of weird, bad things going on.
Especially in terms of how to treat someone that is seeking treatment mental issues, I would say, and the way that, providers should be handling. I mean, ostensibly the main character is a bad provider because he's the murderer in the end, turns out, right? So obviously he wasn't going to be a great care provider in the first place, and perhaps his ideas are meant to be toxic, but it's not like really like that part is pushed back upon, like how he goes about sort of, possibly intimidating his patient subtly, you could say. While toxic, perhaps not as bad as the other handful.
Yeah, I agree. The Silent Patient has a toxic message in terms of, I don't know, because their messages are toxic for people with mental illness, and it's fucked up. Like, and the people who are neurodivergent or who have some kind of ailment that they let's say have to take medication for, they face so much scrutiny and bad press as it is, and to see this book so well renowned, because it's like it's like a bestseller and all that stuff, and it just kills me that we've got another piece of media out there touting these shitty, negative, incorrect stereotypes and making mental illness just seem like
Actually, while we're on that, I need to once again raise for consideration, but probably going to be culled pretty quickly as well. All in a Row, that plays.
Oh my god, I forgot about that. Oh, I'm putting that in the list. Yeah, All in a Row is fucking nightmarish. Christ.
All in a Row, I would like in terms of like
that
thing,
okay,
like the
yeah. Let's get rid of
the lesser version.
All right, I've culled Silent Patient. Now we have All in a Row because that's a similar problem, but All in a Row is much more egregious in the way that it's displayed.
Where they're presenting a neurodivergent person as like inherently sort of
wild animal, like oh god, I forgot about that. Just getting old.
So maybe we'll come back to that in a moment. And
all right,
maybe we should talk about Wild Animus.
I think we can get rid of Sword of Truth series because it sucks, but every hero's journey story kind of has the same problematic messaging.
I guess I would say that too. I mean, for me, a lot of the toxicity comes from my understanding of what happens with Richard later in the books, where he becomes like way more of a political mouthpiece.
Right.
And also like explicitly, cordons off magic people from non-magic people by just like creating a different world where they can, live separately. This sort of like segregation idea.
Oh my god, what? That happens?
Yeah, like basically Richard becomes God and is able to just like say, hey, okay, all the magic people can live here and all the non-magic people can live here. And then there's no problems.
That sets a very horrifying and dangerous precedent.
But that's not necessarily in what we read so far. Not, so I don't know if we want to like, so maybe, I wouldn't mind calling that for now. Perhaps if we get deeper into Sword of Truth later, it might make a reappearance.
All right, so we've got Wild Animus, All in a Row, Growing Around, and Hoe Tactics. So this last cut's going to be a deep one.
I think I might get rid of Wild Animus before any of these other ones.
Yeah, I mean, Wild Animus, you're probably right, because Wild Animus, Wild Animus is a lost episode, so I'm guessing many of you never heard it unless you're an OG listener from 2015. But if you didn't listen to TBC in 2015, then you would have heard it. Wild Animus is a book by Rich Shapiro. It became much maligned over Rich's advertising tactics. He would get dressed up in a goat suit and just hand them out on campuses. I'm trying to remember. He would just give them to libraries and bookstores. Free book that people got it because he just kept handing copies of it to people. Yeah, and it's very its prose is intensely purple, a very deep shade of purple. And it's got some toxic messaging about relationships and what's important in life. For example, the main character's whole thing is to become a goat. Yeah,
he wants to become a goat, and get in touch with the goat god that is on top of a mountain, and he makes his girlfriend work as a waitress to completely support his hallucinogenic habit. Yeah, his hallucinogenic goat costume habit. Yeah, I know. It's actually written quite seriously, which is why it's all the more absurd. Anyway, I think we can cull it because the other things in this category are just far more heinous. I would say, so what we're left with in terms of our top three are Hoe Tactics, Growing Around, and All in a Row.
Chris.
And I think all of those deserve a top spot.
Chris.
What?
We forgot Melanie's Marvelous Measles.
That's true.
That needs to be there.
True.
That's
okay, so
literally
we're
a toxic message.
True. That's the anti-vax book.
For children.
For children. Oh, okay. So you know what? I think in that case, it's a competition between Melanie's Marvelous Measles and Growing Around. Because those are both toxic for children messages.
That's true. I think Melanie's Marvelous Measles is obviously worse because that can lead to literal death. So I don't...
yeah. And Growing Around is more about, like, you know, never having to grow up, or, like, you know, how children should treat adults and vice versa. Which is just sort of this misguided sort of alternate take where kids are in control and therefore, you know, they're... I don't even know if it was necessarily pushing that their, like, unrepentant chaos that they caused was better than adults or anything. It was really just sort of like, what would happen if kids were in charge kind of a thing.
Yeah, and the problem there is that the main character child who you're supposed to identify with, you know, as a child reading this book, you're supposed to be like, Sally, you know, Sally, whatever her name is. You know, that's the one you're supposed to root for. And she's just really cruel in a lot of ways and abusive. And it's really gross. God, I hate to rank like physical ills over mental ills, but Melanie's Marvelous Measles straight up is like, don't get vaccinated, eat fruits and veggies, and go outside in the sun. It's like, you should just do all three of those. You should just do all three of them. You can't. I would favor culling Growing Around in favor of Melanie's Marvelous Measles because I would say the anti-vax thing is way more toxic than you know. Try to remain childish in some ways. Which can hold true in some cases, but... I don't know. Should we cut hoe tactics instead?
Oh, maybe. Hoe tactics is just about...
The consent issue and the being upfront is my problem with hoe tactics.
Manipulating men to, you know, pay for dinner and drinks and whatever you can get them to pay for.
And promising sex without ever really delivering, but then maybe accidentally delivering and still making that work in your favor. And the whole idea is to treat dating like a job, basically. Yeah. And I understand.
And that's pretty toxic.
Yeah.
Because it's just spreading around bad vibes.
Yeah, because it's not
generally.
Because the problem is that it's not sex work where you're upfront with the fact that, like, you're providing, or I won't even say sex work because sometimes, you know, you can just provide company or whatever to someone and it not be sexual. But let's just say sex work to make it easier. Like, at least with that kind of stuff, everyone is very upfront that this is a paid service. There are no feelings. And it's not a personal relationship. Whereas with hoe tactics, it instructs women to lie explicitly, to even lie about previous sexual trauma and rape in order to get out of their other lies. So it encourages people, I guess it's targeted toward women, but you know, it could be used, I could think, by anyone really who was looking to really defraud people. And I know a lot of people believe that this is
it's sort of the method for, you know, women to sort of get back at men for being trash for so long, because it's written by a man, but he's still coming from the perspective of like, well, hey, men are trash and you should just take advantage of them because they're easily manipulated, which is also toxic in the land of, you know, any sort of interaction, you could say.
Yeah, and again, it's like, if you're going to request money from someone in exchange for social or sexual favors, you need to be honest about that. Tricking people is not, again, we all live within a fucking social contract. And I think breaking that by... We live in a society. We live in a society here, yeah. And I think breaking that by explicitly lying to people... I just, why? What is the point of that?
Yeah. And I would say that's more toxic than what's happening in Growing Around. So I would honestly cut Growing Around from this list and leave us with our top three.
Okay, all right, let's do it.
Of hoe tactics, All in a Row, and Melanie's Marvelous Measles.
Yeah, and I also think it's worse because hoe tactics is aimed at adults who are presumably grown and can affect others, I think, in maybe worse ways. I don't know, maybe that's a bad argument, but Growing Around certainly does have a toxic message and is bad, but
not as bad as these other three, which like basically are like, hey, lie to people. Mentally neurodivergent people are, complete wild animals sometimes.
That need to be tamed and that ruin families.
Yeah, and then just general anti-vaxness, which are just 3 horrifying shades of human behavior, I would say. And ranking one above the other almost feel like I almost might not want to crown a number 1 here, because these are all just horrendous in terms of...
Well, if we go for body count, I think Melanie's Marvelous Measles wins, because that could actually lead to death. So I'm going to put that at number 1.
Been. So you know what? I might agree with you there in that this is the one that could potentially do the most damage.
And then all in a row because, man, people don't need any more bad press for folks who are not neurotypical. That shit pisses me off. And then Hoe Tactics at number 3.
Sure.
Just because I can understand maybe why Adam in the chat says they all need to be thrown into a fire. I agree. Hoe Tactics just because I can maybe see why, in very extreme circumstances, why you may not want to be upfront about that. Like, perhaps we're talking human trafficking, we're talking people in serious poverty and difficult situations who maybe can't be upfront about the fact that they're trying to grift to get by. So that's why I wouldn't put that quite at number 1. But I think it's aimed at your just regular ass person, and that's why it's really terrible. So... All right.
So there we have it. Congratulations.
All right. Most toxic message. Let's give it up for Melanie's Marvelous Measles, the child anti-vax cartoon book. Followed by All in a Row for number 2, the play about people with autism that cast them in a terrible light. And finally, Hoe Tactics, the book that encourages you to lie to get some cool headphones. All right. And your rent
next
paid.
Category.
All right.
On to the next one, Paris.
Worst editing or proofreading. We have nominee number 1, the Maradonia series, Selfie Showdown, The Woman You Marry, I'm Living But Not Alive, Moon People 1 and 2. Chris, number 1 is The Woman You Marry. All right, great. We can go to the next category. Done.
Really?
Yes.
Selfie Showdown's up there too, I guess, but like...
The Woman You Marry...
I do remember way more like horrendous misspellings and proofreading and from The Woman You Marry.
There were sentences that straight up we couldn't even puzzle the meaning of. It was like, I don't know what this is. That's just easily number 1. I think 2 and 3 are going to be a little harder to pick.
I think Moon People might be the first cut here in terms of
I was going to say
I'm living really silly.
I'm Living But I'm Not Alive, I think might be the first cut.
Yeah, both of those are very silly, but I mean, I remember I'm Living But I'm Not Alive having a lot of misspellings.
Yeah.
And so, but like, Selfie Showdown was also in that same area in terms of like raw amounts of misspellings.
Yeah, it's kind of
These all just have like ludicrous dialogue, essentially, which is my major issue with all of them.
Yeah.
But at least Moon People was like not as misspelled as some of the other ones. It was just like the really corny ass situations that would come up with this scientist being taken to the moon and like then this
and then we made love. Then we watched First Contact. I don't know, whatever movie they watched. We ate popcorn. We had chicken for dinner. I actually think that's pretty bad. I'm Living But I'm Not Alive at least had sentences that maybe had clauses in them.
Okay. Yeah, all right.
I would call that first.
Okay, you know what? Yeah, I'll agree with you on that one.
Selfie Showdown was really bad, but it's been a while. I can just summon these at will, actually. The ones we have electronically. Sure. Let me see if
you probably won't have a lot of time to like flip through every last bit here to like really get the true impact that we had when we were reading it. At this point, we should just consider like the Maradonia series as a whole. I think just in terms of like raw page count and not improving at all over the course of multiple books.
That's a contender for sure for number 2. I think Maradonia should be number 2.
Just because there's just no improvement over the course of that. And even regardless of who you think was writing that, whether you think it was Gloria's dad or Gloria, there should have been some more care taken into, after your first one. Okay, I get it. It's your first try here. but maybe the second one should have some improvement instead of literally just reposting that same intro classroom scene into all of them.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so Maradonia's 2. I'm actually going to say that Moon People was worse than Selfie Showdown, because I opened the file, and it's stupid, but this is another thing that's written as a screenplay, actually. I kind of forgot about that. It actually doesn't... I mean... It's more dumb dialogue and just uninteresting sentences rather than them being a total train wreck. So compared to Moon People, it's really...
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, this one might be a quick category for us, man.
I mean, this is something that I'm passionate about, so, you know.
Yeah, I mean, The Woman You Marry really was...
Oh, fuck me, that was crazy.
Especially because it's like a bait and switch from like a real legitimate author that does better stories. I think that really propels it forward. It's like you could have at least done some editing and proofreading to try and seem like that dude in some way if you're trying to do this grift.
All right, so worst editing, proofreading, The Woman You Marry.
Congratulations. Such a quick award. We already knew in our hearts, in our minds.
Number 2 is the whole Maradonia series, and number 3, the Moon People series. So There we are. All right, Chris. Oh, I love this category. This is a patron recommended category. Chris, take us away.
Yeah. Okay, this category has a lot of nominees, so we're going to be culling quite a bit, just like get the reaping scythe out here. This is most likely to become an off-Broadway musical. Nominees are Marked and Betrayed from the House of Night series, the Maradonia series, Holy Cow, Dark Star, Woman Worship, Crawfish Baby, The Stain of Time V2, More Than a Trent Reznor Biography, A Spectre is Haunting Texas, Warrior Cat, Too Far, Karnaki the Ghost Finder, The Eclipse of Darkness, Flashback, and The Adventures of Lord Iffy Boatress.
This is a hell of a category. I just think...
I mean, I can see we can some cuts we can immediately make here, Paris.
All right. What's your immediate sense? What immediately would not work?
I mean, Woman Worship and Crawfish
Baby.
Okay.
Oh, no! Crawfish Baby, it's seafood and jazz, and cum and dick sucking, but seafood and jazz. So much jazz.
How do you expand that into a show where it's just like this guy listened to jazz and then he met a guy in a grocery store and they sucked each other's dicks? Like, that's not a whole musical, Paris.
Maybe it's a one-man show. Maybe he's telling us about his dick sucking.
That doesn't solve the length issue. That's what he said.
Oh, but it has jazz elements. Okay, fine. This is Woman Worship for Crawfish Baby.
If you're going with that, then
fine.
like The Stain of Time is where you go with that, like where it's just like, Trent Reznor's, it's just Nine Inch Nails based, like weird shit.
All right, this is so good.
Give me some more cuts for you, Paris.
I think we can cut Too Far. I
only put that in because it already has music explicitly written for it.
It could be a play, but I don't think it would be a musical. Like, I can't see the kids being like, my mom's doing crack in the other room. Like, I just can't really see that happening.
Let's go in the forest and have some hallucinations.
Yeah, I can't. It's 2 6-year-olds.
Yeah, that would be like more interstitial music that you like faded into a play.
I think it could be. Okay,
yeah, we got to make some quick cuts here.
Karnaki the Ghost Finder is hilarious.
That would be. You would have to hire me to score it, obviously.
Yes,
based on what I did. But I think there's a lot, like, that would be a real silly one to me. It would be like a parody almost, and like that would be the source material, and you would have these wacky misadventures with Karnaki
This is so hard. I can see so many of these being terrible musicals that somehow get popular. Like, we all remember, what's the fucking space train one? Starlight Express. That's an abomination, and that's a musical that people go to see and pay for. Like, I mean, I don't know. So many of these could be musicals.
Okay, well, let me give you some gut cuts here.
Okay.
Just like things that like Warrior Cats and Holy Cow. And also A Spectre is Haunting Texas.
Really? You don't see it?
I mean, like, all three of those, I could see those, like, but not most likely. Same with Marked.
I would sooner cut Maradonia than cut those.
Okay, so fine. Let's at least get rid of Maradonia if we're both in agreement on that one.
What else can I feel like? Flashback, I'm gonna cut. Yeah, I'm gonna cut.
Yeah,
that one.
I mean, I just put that there because I just see the opportunity for some like butt rocky, like anti-Obama kind of shit happening there.
Yes,
but like not as likely as some of these other ones. I like Eclipse of Darkness. That how do you even like what do you do with that to make that a musical?
Oh yeah, I mean it was written as a screenplay. High budget.
It was a screenplay, sure.
Okay,
but like,
yeah,
you just cannot.
Okay,
you have to like give your entire audience like fucking ayahuasca for that to like really go over.
I really think, I mean, Warrior Cats could so easily become a musical, like a kids cat-based musical, but we already have cats, so maybe people wouldn't go for it.
I think you're just feeling the Cats vibe from there.
I am feeling the Cats vibe. All right, I'm gonna call Warrior Cats. I wish I was saying that about the series in itself.
Okay, what about House of Night? I guess, we have your like Harry Potter musicals and shit. And,
that's why I was thinking it would be a really good knockoff. Like maybe not off Broadway, maybe like 3 blocks away and take a right Broadway. Like really, really off. All
right, let's see if how about Holy Cow and A Spectre is Haunting Texas.
Holy Cow,
I think
we can
less likely.
We can cut Holy Cow, but I think that
could
was
happen. David Duchovny's like religious animal adventure.
Well,
he's
a musician too, so he could provide the music. But again, I think that would just be a play with some interstitial music and not a full blown turkeys singing about how he's flying a plane.
So yeah, we're left with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 here that could all reasonably, I still feel A Spectre is Haunting Texas doesn't quite make the cut here in terms of the other ones.
All right.
Because like all the other ones, like Dark Star has music in it.
True.
The whole freedom song thing happening there.
Oh fuck, you're right.
Marked and Betrayed has like something that could like feel better. Because we have a tradition of that.
I think I'm gonna cut Karnacki because again, that's another thing I could see being a play with some interstitial music, but not a musical.
Sure, I was envisioning a sort of a wacky parody happening there. Adventures of the Lord Iffy Boat Race, just because Bruce Dickinson could provide some like hypersexualized Iron Maiden tunes or something for that.
I'm gonna call
like
Karnacki.
That could be part of it here. So we're essentially left with Marked / Betrayed, Dark Star, The Stain of Time, and The Adventures of Lord Iffy Boat Race. Oh yeah.
This is tough.
All 3 of those ones over there already, like besides Marked, already have like some kind of musical backing. I think at this point it's between The House of Night and Iffy Boat Race in terms of what could become a musical.
Oh, I don't think Lord Iffy Boat Race could become a musical given its content.
True. You know what? Yeah. So let's. I mean, that would just be a lot of like
that would get
huge boob props.
Well, right? And I mean, it's just got a lot of sentiments in it that wouldn't fly even
if you use like Iron Maiden style stuff. It wouldn't mesh well. So then we've got our top 3.
All right,
the House of Night series, Dark Star, Confessions of a
rock idol. Yeah.
If you don't know what that book is, that was basically like a born again Christian kind of thing where this Marilyn Manson alike person like renounced his demonic ways and found Christ.
But not before his on retainer fortune teller possessed him to shoot, or she was something about possession. Satan made him shoot someone. Satan made him shoot her. Right? Yeah,
something like that. Something like that. Man. And like I said, that has explicit music made for it. Honestly, Paris, I think I see my number 1 here.
What is it?
Which is The Stain of Time.
Because the music would be good. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like the Nine Inch Nails vibe would fit with this weird shit that's happening there. And I don't think Trent would ever license that. So like the most likely question kind of. So if we're talking most likely, then it might be Dark Star, but I don't think that guy has the budget for it. I mean, none of these people do except maybe House of Night.
Yeah, so I don't know. Most likely, I guess maybe The Saint of Time wouldn't be the most likely. You're right. So it'd probably be.
That's a tough choice.
It is tough. Likely. The House of Night series or Dark Star. I mean, it depends.
The Stain of Time would be the one I'd want to see.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. But most likely, right? I think Marked Betrayed has the budget, But I don't know.
True.
Darkstar might too, because there's a lot of rich, like evangelicals that would bankroll that shit.
There's funding happening there.
Yeah, so...
And I think that's explicitly more musical.
It is.
So I might give it to Darkstar.
All right, Darkstar.
Actually.
And then 2 is marked, and then... All right. Most likely to become an off-Broadway musical, Darkstar Confessions of a Rock Idol.
Congratulations.
Followed by number 2, the House of Night series. That's the Marked and the Betrayed episodes of Terrible Book Club. And then finally 3, Stain of Time version 2, More Than a Trent Reznor biography. Fabulous. That was such a fun category. Thank you to, I want to say, Martin. I can't remember if it was Martin or Kieran. One of our patrons, I think it was Martin. Thank you for that suggestion. That was a really fun, that was a fun one that we hadn't thought of. So, most disappointing character arc. I think this was also a listener suggestion. All right, we got Richard from the Sword of Truth series, Sally from Growing Around, Maya and Joey from Maradonia, the guy from Flashback, and then the guy from Wild Animus. I can't remember their names. I think we can cut Flashback and Wild Animus. Because
just immediately have the top 3 over here.
Well, because
I mean, Wild Animus is like his refusal to despite doing on this self-finding journey to even acknowledge the people that he was doing damage to.
Yeah, but at least he dies at the end.
That's true, but then at the same time, can't we say the same thing about Maya and Joey?
Oh, that's right. I think Flashback.
That's the one thing I wanted to. Yeah, Flashback we can cut.
I mean that character arc also sucked because. I would say the 3 main characters, I don't know. There was, I don't know if there was really any redemption there. Oh, God.
That's why it was disappointing, though.
Now I'm now I'm wondering if I can even cut that one. I think we can cut Richard because we've only read 3 books and he's just kind of been the same in those 3.
He just does get more and more powerful and
which is dumb.
A little bit more political. But yeah, maybe we should reserve judgment on that until we read more into it. If we read more into it,
Sally from Growing Around. Again, there's only that one book, the Party Panic. Growing Around Party Panic is the one we read. That was really disappointing because this is a child who is an abusive, cruel tyrant who learns nothing from her ways and thinks that she's actually right, and that perspective is written as though it's correct.
Yeah, I would not cut that one from the top 3 on this one.
I might cut Maya and Joey because that's the same shit as the hero's journey. I mean, they don't really. It's hard.
I mean, they kind of learn and grow a little.
Yeah. Let's go Wild Animus then.
Fine. Okay.
It's
Wild Animus is just.
But he dies at the end.
But it's at least somewhat interesting in the way he just basically, ruins himself, let's say.
Yeah, I actually would say that character arc is interesting because although she's a shit, it's very avant-garde, right? You don't expect a character to kind of nosedive into hallucinogens and want to become a goat. So that was disappointing, but at least an interesting disappointment.
I would agree on that one.
Okay, so is it the fucking 3 amigos from Flashback? I forget their names. It's the grandfather, the father, and the kid from Flashback. Maya and Joey from Maradonia or Sally from Growing Around?
I think I might say Sally, Paris, because I was really hoping that, out of all the stuff that she was putting her parents through, especially her mom, she would have some moment of clarity as to exactly what she was doing to them. But she does not. The whole resolution of the book is and then she had that party that showed up that mayor character who was mean to her. And that's it. So I might give it to Sally on this one.
Yeah, I might too, although I do think the grandpa, dad, and son from Flashback are particularly heinous because they're explicitly racist and
even grow more racist over time because the grandpa was I'm a liberal professor that learned his lesson when the world went to shit, which sucks.
Yeah, it's hard for me. Yeah, I think we can call or Maya and Joey can be number 3. But I think number 2 and 1 are going to be hard. I just think because Flashback is so relevant right now and written in a way where even though it's fiction, it's based in a version of reality and it's based in real politics and real political opinions.
Sure.
Sally from Growing Around is bad, but it's a children's book, and I don't know.
But I expect, when you start Flashback and you just read exactly where they're going, you kind of expect those characters to not really develop into and then they found out that they actually had shitty ideas about different races. Whereas
true.
with Sally, you're kind of expecting her to somehow gain some empathy for her parents, and she just does not.
I agree with you. From a children's book, I definitely expect that. I expect that to be a key part of the story, that the child learns something and develops, and Sally does not. So let's give it to number 1, and then number 2. All right.
Yeah.
Most disappointing character arc, Sally from Growing Around.
Congratulations,
yeah, the worst
Sally.
Child.
You're fucking awful.
Number 2 goes to the grandfather, dad, and son, the main characters from Flashback. And finally, Maya and Joey from Maradonia.
It's not really disappointing that they just got fucking poisoned and died at
that
the
was
end,
the best. The best ending.
In terms of what could have been done, yeah, very disappointing.
All right, the Mary Sue Award. I think this one will also be quick.
Yeah.
We have Monster Hunter International. Again, Maradonia getting nominated for all sorts of shit today. Marked and Betrayed, The Sword of Truth, and then finally Moon People. I already know what my number 1 is going to be.
I mean, Moon People is in there just because the author used some combination of his real last name and other things. So it's literally just him in this context, I would say, of being a super cool scientist that figures out how to microwave Mars and as a result can get laid a bunch.
Yeah, it is. Oh, that's true.
So that's, pretty almost explicitly Mary Sue.
But Marked and Betrayed was written by a mother-daughter team where they put the daughter in the main role. And they even used the high school she went to, the town they actually live in.
Sure.
Or maybe not the high. Sorry, she obviously didn't go to a vampire high school, but
yes, not that part.
Sorry, I meant that they Sorry, the hobbies that the character has at the school are the same ones that the real daughter has, and so that was pretty Mary Sue-ish. The Sword of Truth, I would call, because I don't know enough about.
Richard is more of a political mouthpiece in the end, more than a complete Mary Sue. I don't think that Goodkind thought he was the seeker of truth. All that, maybe he was a little bit, but not in the way that he thought he was turbo powerful, or he could do the.
Although looking at Terry Goodkind.
How dare you?
God,
how dare you?
I'm sorry. Oh, Cerebral strike me down. Looking at Terry Goodkind, although R.I.P. Terry Goodkind died this year.
Yeah,
Ooh.
Rip to a real one.
Yeah, I mean, for the fact that we didn't love his books, he did make a lot of people fall in love with fantasy. But looking at his pictures, I was pretty sure that those S&M scenes were straight from some of his weekends. Just
yeah, I mean, true.
Bald guy wearing tight black stuff. I was like, nah, I don't know.
Yeah. In terms of ridiculous Mary Sue-ness, not as up there as some of these other ones here.
Monster Hunter International.
That's the last one we have to consider. Where, you know what, I might cut that one just because, very obviously tough guy, gun person, but
martial
not
arts.
as explicitly the same as the man or the people that wrote it, I should say, because House of Night was written by women, as those other ones, I would say.
I don't know. Monster Hunter International vehemently defends its Mary Sue-ness, which is why it kind of rises as cream to the top of my Mary Sue crop here. Because there is an infamous blog entry that I think we read on the episode where the author was responding to criticism that people were like, oh, of course you made the main character who's supposed to be you married to this fantastically beautiful, badass woman. And he's like, my wife really does look like that character, blah, blah, blah. He just got really, really incensed about it. Was it Bayonetta? No, it was some other bee-named black-haired femme fatale in action or superhero or fantasy shit. I don't remember, but he was like, my wife really does look like that. And that kind of really just made me go, Mugh. Yeah. And they had, there was just a lot of similarities there.
Honestly, for me, then it's between Marked and Betrayed and Moon People. In terms of, I might cut House of Night because Moon People, that was the dude, right? And like hobbies are one thing, but it's not as close as like literally naming the character similar to yourself.
But remember they even, I hate to talk about this because it's something that riles me up, but they even were like, we have Native American heritage, so we made sure the main character had Native American heritage. And it's like this big thing, like the mystical Native. I just think that's way more sinful, especially since the mother was like encouraging all this shit in her child co-author, which is a whole other bag of weird. I think that might be worse.
Moon People gets cut?
Or Maradonia can't. I don't know. Does Maradonia get cut?
It's either Maradonia or Moon People then? I mean, Maradonia, like, casting yourself in the movie is, like, pretty up there.
That's pretty good. Yeah, let's take out Moon People.
Okay, fine.
All right.
It's all the M's. Wow, it was all M's for this one, for Mary Sue.
Mary Sue.
Delicious Mary Sue soup for me.
It's got all of my personal fluids.
Ugh. That's Mary Sue soup.
Okay, so
just cry and bleed and come into this bowl.
And then heat it until 350 degrees using your stainless steel thermometer. Anyway, so
all right. Well, what's the number one? The merriest Sue.
All right, I think this is so hard. I think
might be
Monster
Maradonia.
Hunter might be 3. I think.
Yeah, I would say. Yeah.
And then the other 2 are going to be the harder ones to place.
It might be Maradonia, Paris.
But I feel like that's like what everyone says. But Marked and Betrayed. Oh, but Maradonia, you're right. They did cast her in the fucking movie. All right, that's it. That's one.
You gotta.
Yeah, that's one.
Like
you're
Paris,
right. You're right.
It's the merriest of Sues there,
Chris. I can't deny when you're right.
At least with the House of Night, you can have the thing of like, I don't actually think I'm a well, I mean, Gloria Tesh doesn't actually think she's an adventuring princess from another dimension or whatever, but it's just, I would go Maradonia, then Marked, and then Monster Hunter.
All right, here we are. The Mary Sue Award does go to Maradonia.
Congratulations,
series.
Maradonia. Finally, you won something.
Second is Marked, Betrayed, 2 books in the House of Night series. And then lastly, Monster Hunter International, whatever book we read from that. That's also a series. Interesting.
That was just the name of the first book, too.
Oh, right. All right. We only have 2 more categories left and then question time, so I think this will time out nicely. We've got about 45 minutes. I mean, we can always go longer than another 45, but that's what I portioned out. All right, this is actually, I love this one. Chris made this one up, so.
Yeah, so this is, if you've been listening to us for a while, you know that we're not necessarily a huge fan of romance stuff or like sexy stuff where it's not needed especially. So today we are presenting the Pepe Le Pew Needless Romance Award, and the following are your nominees. Moon People 1 and 2, Crabs, The Human Sacrifice, Book 6 in the Crab series, Marked and Betrayed from the House of Night series, The Angel Wore Fangs, Too Far, Bear, Sleeping with the Fishes,
this is tough.
Wizard's First Rule, and The Overton Window.
Oh my
God. The first book we ever read.
God, this is so hard.
Paris, I immediately have some colors because they are explicitly romance novels, and I don't think those should be considered for the Needless Romance Award.
That's fine. Which ones are you talking about?
Which would be Sleeping with the Fishes and The Angel Wore Fangs. Like, you're going to those books because you want that thing in there, and that's like explicitly the central point.
You're right.
Of those books there.
You're right. I get it. I'm calling. They're gone.
Sorry,
they're blacked out. All right.
I don't think that's the spirit of what's happening.
I
here.
also think that also disqualifies Marked and Betrayed, because when you're reading a teen, those books are.
They are just knockoff Twilight, right?
Yeah.
They're just, store brand Twilight.
But it's still, actually, no, I take that back. It's still needless, because books for teens about magical adventure don't have to have romance in them. So never mind. I would
agree. So you know what, that puts it in contention for me, because I would almost much rather there were some young adult stuff without romance out there, just to like let them know that, hey, it doesn't have to all come down to this. And that's the major reason for this category existing, is that yes, fine, having a relationship and that kind of thing can be good, but it is not the requirement to have a fulfilling life, I would say.
Yeah, and Oh man, this is tough. Crabs, the Human Sacrifice, book 6 in the Crab series. That really had some
that
needless,
had needless sex in it more than anything. But it was pulpy in a way that like made, right? Like you kind of expect like hyper violence and like sexy stuff to be happening. Like it was explicitly like a horror B movie kind of feel.
I guess, but it's still needless. Like
true. Like in that genre, the sex is needless.
I think maybe I would cut Moon People because even though the romance was needless, it was so short and insignificant and God, this is so hard.
I would say like with Moon People, like, you know, almost the point of those books is that the main character is such a cool guy, and you have to know that like that's part of the deal there in a way, is like these stupid flirty scenes and dates.
Oh,
you know, it's not completely needless.
You know what I would actually cut is Bear, because I actually think the Bear romance is integral to what makes the book weird and good.
Yeah, the only angle I was considering there was that it is with a bear.
Yeah.
Could you have, like, maybe have done that from another angle? Probably not. I just wanted Bear to be sort of looked upon, but I would be willing to cut that as well.
Just because it's so, yeah. All right.
What about Wizard's First Rule, or the Sword of Truth series entirely?
All that romance is super needless. Why can't they just be a team? Why?
I mean, like, so much of it is, like, centered around Richard and Kaylin's whole, like, they can't really do anything because she's a confessor.
But then they can because reasons.
Yeah. So, I mean, let's keep that there in the running, hard. I would say.
Too far is terrifying.
Yeah, that one might be the most needless. Like, that is a really high contender for me.
Yeah, because
I would rather put that over Moon People or Crabs.
I agree. Let's move that. Let's let that rise up. To be clear, Too Far reads as though it is a fantastical sort of dark romance in the Alaskan wilderness about 2 6-year-olds.
We received a comment on that on YouTube that was along the lines of like, well, you really don't know kids if you think this is impossible. It's like, yeah, kids can have infatuations, sure, but the way it was written out seemed a little bit more adultly considered, let's say. It didn't ever really trip into the realm of like sexual stuff all the time, I would say, but it got way too close.
Yeah, and I know that, you know, little kids will like just spontaneously take their clothes off and not think anything of it, but the problem was that these little kids were taking their clothes off and thinking about it, which is, they're 6. Like, anyway.
Yeah. That's a really weird age range for that kind of thing. So it was completely needless.
And the other reason I dislike that is because, honestly, I thought the book overall was surprisingly good, especially coming from Rich Shapiro, who brought us such trash as Wild Animus. I actually was like, you know, this isn't that terrible of a book. But the problem for me is that why do children of opposite genders always have to be in love and little baby couples when they're kids? Why can't they just be friends and have a close friendship? I don't appreciate that agree. It went too far. Maybe that was the point. I don't know. We made that joke
on the episode as well.
Yes, we did. So that one, I did feel
that's a top contender for me.
Yeah, the romance is pretty needless.
I think we could cut Crabs.
Yeah,
because
that's
like
fine.
that's
I gotta agree to something.
Like, it's not like the story would have been made better with the inclusion.
That's a good point. That's
exclusion.
That's a really good point to consider. Yeah, you're right. Even if that had been removed, it wouldn't have changed the overall fabric of the book at all. Wouldn't have helped it become better. So okay, good call, Chris. All right, we're down to 5. Getting there.
I think the Overton window, like, while that's very by the numbers sort of like thriller kind of stuff there, and like yes, the romance is very hackneyed and needless for sure. Like the main character walks in on this like lady like putting a flyer up for her weird like political activism group.
But it is integral to the plot
the whole time.
It is integral to the plot because she turns out to be a double agent. So we can, I guess, get rid of that one. Yeah. Although I don't love the trope of like all female double agents have to fuck people, but unfortunately, if you've ever watched The Americans, it does seem like that is a very important part of being a spy. So we can cull that. All right, down to 4. We can do this.
Okay.
All right.
So I guess for me, it's actually between like Moon People's just like because it's just so dopey on the whole.
And like you said, it's there to serve the white male power fantasy, which is
which
is a
that's another case where like removing the romance doesn't necessarily. I mean, it might make it a little better.
Yeah, actually, I don't. Yeah, it might improve. I would say it would be improved if we didn't have the romance angle.
Marked and Betrayed, I think definitely like even though you're removing ostensibly a big selling point of that series is like the. She's got a lot of boyfriends to juggle.
I just think
I just want a young adult series that does not have that as like a central point. And you could have like at least sort of taken yourself away from Twilight in that way.
Yes.
By not having that be a central tenet. All
right, so let's cut Wizard's first rule because as much as I hate that
the romantic angle between Richard and Caitlin is like, the axis by which all things turn around in that series.
Which makes it really bad, but I also understand that a lot of people expect that from heroes' journeys. Oh God, no, yeah. I don't know. I think we would. I'm trying to justify why I would cut that one. You're right, though. The tension with the confessor stuff wouldn't be there if we didn't have the love story. So it is necessary. Yeah. I'm gonna cut it. Okay, got it.
Yeah,
done. All right.
So we're down to our top three here. Too Far, Moon People, and
Moon People's number 3. I think that's clear. And then 2 is Marked, and then 1 is Too Far?
Yeah, Too Far. I would say it's between the weird child romance vibes in Too Far and wanting to remove romance from a young adult series for fucking once.
Maybe you're right. Maybe Marked Betrayed should be. Yeah. Let's make Marked and Betrayed number 1 and then Too Far number 2. Just because I don't think Too Far. Anyway. In Too Far, you could have some of that childlike infatuation angle being played up there, and it would still make sense. With Marked and Betrayed, like I think you could remove the boyfriend angles, or at least like really minimize it. Yeah,
and you would have something a little bit more interesting, and just have it be Vampire Harry Potter and not Vampire Harry Potter Twilight. Like
yes. All right, so the Pepe Le Pew Needless Romance Award goes to Marked Betrayed, the House of Night
like
series.
A major point of that series.
But again, it's because every teen novel is like, let's have boyfriend-girlfriend stuff.
Yeah, I'm kind of awarding this to the YA genre as a whole.
Oh, and then number 2, Too Far, because the child, the 6-year-old's got a little too adult in parts of that, and then number 3, Moon People 1 and 2, because it was just like this book that was barely a book and yet still needed to be a white male power fantasy because women needed to have a thing.
Fall over him for his Mars microwaves. See, I made you a nice, tasty, hot Mars straight from the microwave.
Straight from the space-o-wave. All right, and our final category, worst nonfiction. So this is a fun one. These are all either instructional or true stories from people's lives, like memoirs, or I think those are the only types we have, instructional or
generally,
memoirs.
Yeah, something that was meant to be, somewhat instructive or, give you tips or...
All right. For worst nonfiction, our nominees are Crossing Over with John Edward, Bitchcraft, Chakra Crystals, a hidden book. Actually, it was in episode 30, but it's the fun fact TBC trivia is the one book not in a title in an episode. The Art of the Deal, Small Town Cop, Big City Crimes, The Beginner's Guide to Sex in the Afterlife, Super Mario Bros. 3, Brick by Brick, 101 Weapons for Women, Worst Ideas Ever, 42 Truly Terrible Decisions, and finally, When Trump It's Ring, The Battle, A True Story.
All right.
Woo, these are some contenders for worst nonfiction. Oh,
I've got a gut cut for you.
All right, what's your gut cut?
It might be 101 Weapons for Women. While it has some stupid advice in there, it's not all terrible.
That's true. That's true. It does allow you to get a little creative
And out of all of these, probably has some of the most practical advice.
I was gonna say, yeah, you're probably right. Okay, all right, we'll call 101 Weapons for Women. Good gut cut.
Worst ideas ever. Also, like,
yeah, that was just bad. That was just like a listicle.
Yeah, it was just like very poorly researched, but it's not some of the worst nonfiction that we've seen.
Yeah,
it was really just a long form BuzzFeed article, which can amuse some people somewhere, I suppose.
Yeah. Let's see. Small town cop, big city crimes. Just kind of read like. I mean, it was bad for me. The things that are really bad are the instructional ones that will actually affect your life as the reader, whereas the memoirs are terrible, but they're not telling me to do something that might be bad. So I think we can cut Small Town Cop and When Trumpets Ring just because that's not convincing anybody of anything.
It is, like, When Trumpets Ring, though, is like a tough read.
Yeah.
Like, in terms of trying to get through it.
That's true.
That is, like, some bad reading.
I think I would also cut Super Mario Brothers 3 brick by brick because I don't think, that wasn't telling you to do anything bad. It's just the guy's memoir. It was just
really boring and poorly
really
researched. It was, like, super boring and poorly researched.
What was poorly
It's probably one of the
researched
ones that I would
about
definitely... like, all the, like, stuff in there about, like, Nintendo was, like, apocryphal a lot of the time and, like, not necessarily confirmed or anything.
Oh, okay.
It's true.
I didn't remember that. Good call. Yeah, so I also think it was just, I don't know, I felt like the author, he was trying to write a heartfelt book about something that really mattered to him, his life.
It was definitely more well done than some of these other things, and that's like a very I'm stretching the idea of that because it's super fucking boring to read about your specific button presses while you go through Super Mario 3, dude. Like, I don't understand why anyone would want to read that, even amongst like some of the other stuff in here.
Very bad framing convention, but not as bad as the rest. So we'll call
an easier read than When Trumpets Ring.
Oh, for sure.
Okay, chocolate crystals.
That one was tough because that's another one where this woman, I think with a doctorate or maybe dual doctorates, was charging people to ask her questions about crystal charging.
The consultation fees were outrageous, if I remember.
Yeah, it was like one question answered via email, $50. Like, okay. Or $150. It was
especially when
crazy.
Like the crystal choosing stuff was just like, just feel it, bro. It's like, how is that advice? Why wouldn't that just be what you were doing anyway if you walked into a crystal store for the first time?
Yeah, remember you gotta give your crystals baths and like tuck them in and stuff.
But the crystal selection thing to me was by far the worst part, where it was just like, you'll just know, you just feel it out. Like, how is this helpful?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely sucked, and I think it could mislead people, but I don't think it outright went as far as being like, this yellow tourmaline will cure your cancer. I don't think it went as far.
It had some, like, this can heal certain things, but never, like, true disease, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe, like, fatigue or, like, symptoms of things it could heal or help, but never, like, an actual, proper medical procedure.
I don't know. It's been so long since that was episode 30. That was a long-ass time ago.
All right, let's see if we can just cut from anything else from over here. Like, crossing over with John Edward, while, definitely him taking advantage of people, you could say, and was like presented as fairly straight-faced, it was like, a decent look at what he was doing behind the scenes in that show in a way, right? Like, he claims that this is all super real and everything, but
that's the thing I hate about it. I don't like that. While we're talking about that, I would like to dedicate the worst nonfiction section of this show to the late James Randi, one of my personal idols, and formerly the leading skeptic and debunker of folks like John Edward, who...
Yeah, this one's for you, bud.
Make all these claims about things and take advantage of people's pain and people's confusion about life. So R.I.P. to the realist, James Randi. If you have not seen the documentary about his life, you should. He's a wonderful man that did a lot of good. He's
constantly dunking on charlatans his whole life. So, like, just watch him do that on YouTube a handful of times and have mild faith in humanity.
Well, and he himself is a magician, but he recognizes the difference between magic as entertainment and magic as
Sure.
as a painful way to defraud people. So
yeah.
All right, cheers to James and Randy.
Cheers to you, bud. Clink. All right, what about the art of the deal?
Oh, I mean, that might be number one because Donald Trump was fucking president for 4 years.
I think we should remove the context of that somewhat. Like, we're talking about like worst done nonfiction, and like the ghostwriter was semi-competent. It's just that he had trash fire to deal with, where the whole point of the book was like just walk away and act like a prick and lie to people. That's
really bad advice, though.
It is, but it doesn't make it the worst nonfiction amongst here. I guess I would take that way over something like Crossing Over with John Edward. And I would take so many of these things over Crossing Over with John Edward in terms of worst nonfiction. So I would perhaps cut Crossing Over right now.
I can't cut that one. I can't in good conscience cut it. I think we might be able to cut Bitchcraft because I think as shitty as it was, it's not... I can't decide if it was serious enough. I think it's mostly pretty jokey, even though it was encouraging the reader to be really petty. I don't know that it goes so far as to tell you that it doesn't tell you you're going to cure a disease with spells, which I think is really important. Whereas Chakra Crystals goes a little too far. Maybe that doesn't say it's going to cure cancer, but it does say that like certain stones
I would rather take a Bitchcraft over Chakra Crystals because at least Bitchcraft is somewhat tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah, so we can call Bitchcraft.
Okay.
The Beginner's Guide to Sex in the Afterlife is a fucking thorn in my paw because it never tells us how to fuck while we're dead. It doesn't deliver on the initial promise. It's just this meandering guy who attended a Philosophy 101 class once and is like,
a little bit of quantum mechanics. Little bit.
Everything's a dick and a pussy. Everything's a 1 and a 0. Computers are vaginas and dicks. And you're just like, okay, yes, phallic and yonic symbols are everywhere. We get it, but what are you telling? You're not telling us anything. That book is particularly enraging. At least if it had been someone being like, all right, when you're dead, have someone like put you in somewhere to help you have...
ashes in this dildo.
Yeah, I don't know. Anything would have been better than such an incorrect title. It didn't deliver on its promise.
Okay. All right. What about Control Everyone with Hypnosis?
That also is a problem because that also does not tell you anything about hypnosis.
It's a sales tactics thing of like just be nice to people, and it's also way too short. That might be one of the top contenders for me.
Yeah, I agree with you. That one was particularly
I think
bad.
When Trumpets Ring, actually, for us, we have to make a decision between that and The Art of the Deal in terms of Trump factor.
Oh, you know what? We should have put that one in Most Toxic Message. We both fucked up there. Oh well. Anyway.
Yeah.
Sorry, what were you saying?
We have to make a choice between The Art of the Deal and When Trumpets Ring in terms of like the Trump effects. Like, I think one of those would have to go.
Oh God, okay.
In terms of worst nonfiction, and I think that you actually cut The Art of the Deal because When Trumpets Ring is more incoherent in a way, and more poorly done.
Yeah, but what has the worst? What has worse influence? No one's gonna read When Trumpets Ring. The Art of the Deal led to
influence what we're
presidency.
Engaging by here. The title is just worst nonfiction, so it's just our interpretation of what is like the most poorly done. At least that's how I'm seeing it.
I don't think it's not necessarily the most poorly done. That can be a factor.
Sure. Okay.
I mean, because to me, nonfiction is something you consume that either instructs you or influences you to act in certain ways, or it's just someone's true story, which I guess may influence you somewhat. Which is why I'm having trouble with these, because The Art of the Deal, I mean, it produced the last 4 hell years, or at least gives you a window into how that
book is like. I mean, I guess like for people buying what Trump is selling, it was a major factor.
Well, and the ideas in the book are what Trump basically used to ascend to his position.
True.
But then when Trumpets Ring is this really narrow-minded view on women's reproductive rights, but I think so few people will read that, and it's also so difficult to get through that I don't think it's actually going to impact anyone.
All right, considering what else I'm seeing on this list, I'm willing to cut When Trumpets Ring. All
right. So we're down to 5. Crossing Over, Chakra Crystals, The Art of the Deal, The The Beginner's Guide to Sex in the Afterlife, and Control Everyone with Hypnosis, which two
This is just a bunch of
go.
charlatans here right now,
Yes.
essentially, Paris.
That's why.
So I think we have to make a decision between like chakra crystals and The Beginner's Guide to Sex in the Afterlife. And maybe crossing over is like also part of that like same category of like,
Okay, here we go. Let's cut The Beginner's Guide to Sex in the Afterlife because it was so nothing that it wouldn't actually do it doesn't actually do anything. Whereas chakra crystals, I think someone could read and be like, I'm gonna put this stone on my boob and cure my breast cancer, which is bad. So I'm gonna call The Beginner's Guide to Sex in the Afterlife.
It's also like semi-coherently done, and like I think Control Everyone with Hypnosis especially is one of those like really like could have used like another round of editing or something.
Another
minimally.
several rounds of editing.
Yeah, I would say. So we have to make one more cut before we come to our top 3. And Paris, for me, I guess it's between chakra crystals and crossing over.
Yeah, so I think believing in spirits is not as bad as believing in magic curing rocks, so I would cut crossing over. Even though I think that can lead to a lot of bad things.
I think with crossing over, it wasn't explicitly even like the fact that I got something of behind the scenes on that show made it like a little bit interesting in comparison to these other ones, which just like the insights offered are almost insubstantive or just completely, heinous in terms of the art of the deal.
I mean, yeah. This is hard. I also don't have chakra crystals in front of me because that's a physical one that I don't know if Chris. I think I have. I think it's at my house. Oh, you have it.
No, it's at your place in
Boston,
Massachusetts.
Yeah.
So I feel like crossing over is the cut here for the top 3.
All right, let's do it.
The other ones like just complete charlatanry. Art of the deal is just pushing like be an asshole to everyone. Chakra crystals makes you put your faith in something that is just complete woo-woo, and Control Everyone with Hypnosis is just like putting this needless layer on top of be nice to people and make them trust you.
Yeah. So
which is not hypnosis.
Yeah, it's definitely not hypnosis. I feel like Control Everyone with Hypnosis might be number 1 just because it fails all things, right? It's badly done. It offers no actual substance in terms of what to do besides very self-explanatory stuff, and it goes way too far in terms of saying what it's actually doing. Right. Whereas at least with the Art of the Deal,
that's definitely a heinous one in terms of the effect on the world.
Yeah. I think, though, I'm trying to remember if there was any good advice in the book. I think there was. I think, like,
there
believe
was, like,
in yourself.
1 or 2 pieces. Yeah, It's
okay.
Which, there something about that worked out for Trump, you could say.
All right. And then Chakra Crystals is the final one. All right. So worst nonfiction. The James Randi Worst Nonfiction or Instructional Book Award goes to Control Everyone with Hypnosis.
Congratulations, Control Everyone with Hypnosis. You fucking suck.
Number 2, The Art of the Deal. And the number 3, Chakra Crystals. All right. This concludes the first year of the Terrible Book Club Awards. I will make some poorly photoshopped fake award images for these books, and I will post them on various social media places for you all to enjoy. Thank you so much to all of you who contributed to the categories, the suggestion, nominations, just all these things. We also got some questions from people that we're going to answer in a moment, so thanks for sticking with us. I think I only banked another 20 minutes, but we might go a little over, so yeah, probably another 30 to 40 minutes, I'd estimate.
Yeah, this is going to be a nice long one, I would say. We've done like 3-hour things before with Maradonia, so I think, it's worth having these discussions here.
Yeah, all right, so welcome to part 3. So these are just some questions from listeners and also some from me and Chris. So, Chris, is this a you question or is this from someone?
Yeah, this was just something that I thought would be like a something of a jump-off point for us.
What book made me think the most?
Yeah. What book made you think the most? And not even necessarily like think good, but just like you had to ruminate on the longest. And this could be for any reason. And top contenders for me, honestly, and this was such a weird duo, would be Bear
Yeah, I was gonna say.
And the
Bear.
Maradonia series.
I mean, if we're talking about time spent, I mean, we read what, three Maradonia books? Or technically
Maradonia,
5?
for me,
I don't remember.
Yeah, it was like one of the biggest ruminations on like, you know, in terms of bad art and like, should it be put out there? Just like all the surrounding context of like Gloria was a child and her parents might have pushed her into it. Like, is this worth diving into just because, you know?
Yeah, there's a lot of nuance there.
Yeah,
sure.
The major factor there was that, you know, she kept pushing that well into her adulthood, I would say. There's a nice Polar.
Please sponsor us.
Sponsored by Polar Water. Raylop in terms of my
orange vanilla.
My camera there. Polar.
Anyway, I would please God, I would love a Polar sponsorship. If that's
possible. Please.
I don't know how.
I mean, hawk that stuff up and down.
I already love it. Anyway, I was also going to say Bear, but in terms of hours invested, Maradonia might be.
That one really, like, the central point of this podcast really is like examining bad art. Does it have value in terms of like, you know, critical reception or like, you know, learning something from that, and even the lines we need to draw in terms of like what we critique for what reason. So I might give it to Maradonia in terms of most self-reflection, in terms of like how I'm spending my time with this podcast. Whereas Bear definitely gave me a lot to think about in terms of like some sort of, you know, angles of like how women have to deal with mediocre men a lot of the time throughout their life.
Yeah,
but Maradonia may have made me spend more overall time in terms of, again, the central point I feel of our podcast.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with you on both of those. And I mean, this isn't a thing where we have to like pick one. It's not the awards anymore. So I think saying Bear and Maradonia is fair. I think I also had to think a lot about, I would say after the fact, I thought a lot about hoe tactics.
True.
Because
not
we were
me,
getting,
but...
because we were getting so many criticisms on YouTube, please feel free to check out those comments. They're pretty interesting. I started to wonder, you know, are we wrong in some way about our take on this? And it made me think more critically about my attitudes towards sex work and towards people who, like I said when we were talking about hoe tactics earlier, you know, don't have the safety to conveniently consider things like what's morally right. And again, I'm talking about people in really abusive situations, sex trafficking, you know, I mean...
I can see that.
I think...
We don't have to, like, crown a winner here, Paris.
No.
I think...
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And I also think even, you know, people growing up in areas of the world or this country even where it's not as easy as you might think to go to Walmart and get a job or go to Burger King and just get a job. And maybe that's because you're a young woman and you're responsible for taking care of your siblings because you don't have parents, or like, you know, and the schedule of a regular job doesn't work. And so you turn to schemes like this because you need to survive. So it definitely made me think more critically about all of the situations where this might happen for folks, and where I can't sit here and, you know, on my white lady middle class high horse. So I think I still stand by the part of my opinion where I say, like, I think people should do their best to be honest with others. Like, if you are engaging in any kind of sex work, I think you should be upfront about it. But I understand that there's more nuance to the types of people that might fall into this line of thinking and think that hoe tactics is the option that they have.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that also made me think
all right.
a fair amount.
Worthy of consideration. I would go, and this kind of segues into the next question we have here, with Maradonia being the one that made me really think about my relationship to what I deem as bad art, and how I'm consuming it, and how I'm thinking about it, and how I'm critiquing it. So the next question is, have we learned anything?
Have we learned anything? Oh, I'm sure we've learned quite a bit.
And to me, it's part of that bad art consumption. And the one thing I learned was to sort of like, even though I'm doing a podcast where I'm reading bad books all the time, and I kind of have like, I like to look for like bad music and bad music videos, I need to really make sure I'm stabilizing that with with ingesting and consuming good art, because if you have to have this, at least this perspective where if I'm only consuming bad art, then even the stuff I'm creating, I let my bar sink lower because I'm so used to just all this crap all the time. And you need to like really make sure your consumption of the good stuff is outpacing or even, at least somewhat matched with the bad stuff, so that you have these comparative points to maintain. Like if the ratios get too far off, me as an artist especially, I'm letting myself off the hook more, I feel like, because like, at least I'm not that, which is not what I want this podcast to be.
Hilariously, I had a similar but opposite reaction, because I am way too hard on myself all the time when it comes to my music I create or things I write or what have you. And if anything, something I've learned from Terrible Book Club is that, again, this is going to sound really simplistic, but for me, it's been really hard to embrace things like trying is worth it. Even if you get a terrible review on some, dinky little podcast called the Terrible Book Club or a Terrible Album Club or something, like, you have to try, because trying is making mistakes is the experience you need to be better. And again, I know that this sounds like basic ass shit that all of you already know, but for some people like me, it's very difficult. It's very difficult to get to that point. And I've just learned that it's impossible to make something totally perfect in the way that you envisioned. I mean, for example, I was really nervous about doing guest vocals on an upcoming album for someone I know, because the person who asked me to do it is like someone I really respect and idolize as a musician, and it's a high honor for me to be asked to do this, and I was so nervous about doing it wrong. I came up with these initial ideas and they were good. And I spent weeks just sitting there trying to change them and make them more interesting. And I drove myself fucking crazy. And then finally I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go with what I had originally. And guess what? The person loved it, and it's going to be on the record like that. And sometimes if you come up with something and it sounds good, I'm not saying to stop trying, but if you keep pushing and you're not happy, it's okay to just say, hey, this is pretty good, and that's fine. Workshopping things to death is often, not the way to go. And that's something, it's an example of something I've learned from this show. When we look at these books, I mean, none of them have been 100% perfect, but some of them have been great despite that. Like Swamplandia and Zarsor's Bane and Bear and I'm forgetting some others that were really good. Or even things like the Monkey book, Still Life with Monkey.
Yeah.
While that maybe wasn't a book for us, it's still a good book, and it's got a lot of great elements in it, So, yeah, I think something I've learned is to be kinder, to try to be kinder to myself. Don't get me wrong, I'm not there yet. I'm still a crazy perfectionist, but I'm getting better at being kinder to myself and being more accepting of, a first or second or third try rather than killing myself for a perfection that isn't real.
Yeah. Nicely put, Paris, I will say.
Thanks.
Okay. Our next question.
Oh, this is the listener question.
Yeah. Did any of the authors ever respond to our reviews, and how were their reactions and replies? And yes, we have gotten author responses. We've gotten a good handful, I would say.
Not that many. I think we've only gotten 4.
Well, we've got Audubon's Watch
by
John Gregory Brown.
John Gregory
like
Brown.
That.
Yeah, John Gregory Brown was our first response, and it was infamous.
We got Mazeppa the Wolfhound.
I forget that man's name.
Selfie Showdown.
Kelsey Coe was that guy.
And we got Virus of Desire.
Oh, yeah, that was a pleasant author.
Yeah,
oh,
and we actually
sorry.
In the Dark in the House in the Dark of the Wood was also, that was just a Twitter reply, but it was still a reaction.
Something. Yeah, and it was, and he was happy that we were posting about his book. Someone said in the chat, MK from high school says, I still feel kind of bad about that one. And I'm not sure which one they're referring to.
That's Audubon's Watch. Hello, MK. Thank you for donating that one to the Terrible Book Club.
No, that was a great read because it was weird in strange ways, even though it was
he was by far had the worst reaction out of all of the books that we've read. He sent I think we've talked about this before, but he sent us an email with every award nomination he'd ever received or gotten.
And every good
some of the
review.
Most insecure stuff I've ever seen. Nice. And that's even including the Selfie Showdown author who commented on our Facebook with well, I'll become a patron and then you'll see who's really it or something. Jonathan Brown was offended.
Yeah, and I just thought that was so odd because he's an established author who has won awards for other books. I mean, we haven't read those other books, but he sent us this email and it was all these reviews and awards for other books he had written, not the one that we read. And I'm
yeah. And also, it's reasonable to think, you could have written other better stuff. It's just, we didn't like this one, bro. You didn't have to.
Yeah, and and I can imagine some people would like this. If you like intensely purple sort of Victorian prose about, I don't know, fucked up romances and a questionable death. I mean, I can see how some people might like it. It just, we were not into it for a lot of reasons. And I think we brought up some really
almost wholly unremarkable book in comparison to the other stuff that we've read. It was his reaction that propelled it into sort of a league of its own in terms of memorable stuff.
I was just so shocked because again, he's a professional author. So why would you reach out to this tiny show and try to show
your smaller back then?
Yeah, this was when.
So he must have had some kind of Google alert on his name or something.
A lot of people do. But Turkaram says in the chat, it's not surprising as the writing community on Twitter is incredibly toxic and defensive like that. Good to know.
Why would this guy be on Twitter, though? He's a writing I mean, I guess.
Oh, a lot. Maybe. No, Twitter is full of literature stuff. That's why we have a Twitter.
I suppose.
But yeah, I don't know. I was just surprised because then the lesser known amateur authors responded to us and actually weren't nearly as mean. I mean, the Wolfhound guy was a little weird, but he was like, "Oh, my wife's really liberal, and she laughed, and we listened to it together. She really liked it. Obviously, I had some criticisms. These are all the things you were wrong about."
Got a little snooty there, but it was nowhere near as bad of a reaction.
And honestly, he was right. We were wrong about a lot of things, and
yes,
to defend ourselves, it was because of the way they were written. It just sounded it's not like they were written with footnotes. It was just thrown into this story, and we couldn't tell if it was supposed to be fantasy or real. So anyway, but we were wrong about a lot of things that, for example, we thought that humans could not breastfeed dogs. Turns out we're wrong. You want to breastfeed a puppy to save its life? You get him on your tit. Get him on there. You'll save him.
Let's not spread that advice around too much, Paris, but technically possible if you're in some kind of horrible situation. And
yes. There were just some other things too about Wolfhound specifically, and shit. I'm
the Selfie Showdown guy was just so petty and stupid.
I don't even remember what he said. It was just such a long message. I was like, it's gonna take me so long to reply to this that it's not worth my time.
It was not.
He was just like, you need to understand. I guess I could pull it up, but it's not worth it.
Yeah.
And then we had the Virus of Desire author reach out to us, and that was so great. That was so fun.
He was actually kind of you guys nailed it. This was basically an insane art experiment on my thing, and you even guessed the method correctly. So
props to Chris for that. I mean, it was an excellent interaction. Niedomki credence.
Niedomkiente credence.
Niedomkiente credence. Oh, God, I can't do Polish. I'm so bad. But anyway, they were lovely to talk to, and that was a really fun author interaction. All right.
Yeah, even though he put out some crazy stuff into the world, he was fully aware, and he was like, "Yeah, the hilarious stuff you were laughing at, I was also laughing at." So you guys kind of got the point.
Yeah, they said that they had a great time listening to the episode, so that made us feel pretty good.
Next question.
What book could become decent with just some small changes? This is actually a question from a patron, I think, or a listener. What book could become decent with just some small changes? I'm trying
I
to
mean,
think
there's
of which...
plenty of stuff that like are big changes that could, that would require like wholly coming back to the drawing board that come to mind. But like small changes are tougher ones, I would say, to sort of sell. And I mean, that's tough to consider, I would say.
Oh, I think Demon Pig is a great contender for that. I know
actually,
we just read
it. Demon Pig might be the one, honestly, just because like if you just leaned a little bit harder into the fantasy parody stuff, which was already there.
Yeah, it just wasn't as explicit.
If you just made it explicitly more absurd, that would be a good one. Maybe even Aeon Legion, if you just like dialed back the anime just like a touch. Just like dial back that anime knob just a little bit.
Oh, Chris, we forgot the Tuttle twins and the Fate of the Future for a Toxic Message. Fuck. Oh, well.
I don't think that, you know what, that
this is what happens. This is what happens when you reach 100 episodes. There's too much shit in your back catalog. You can't even remember what you did anymore. And you have to look at your own website to try to figure out what you should be talking about.
Demon Pig, it might be up there. Maybe even that You Suck book, but like that.
Yeah,
like,
I agree.
If you just turn down the horniness a little bit, there was enough silliness. Like that was a parody that was pretty decent for what it was. You just turn the horny knob. Like all of these could be like taking one element and just like easing back a little bit, or another element and just like turning that one up a little bit.
Yeah,
I mean, those would be my 3 pairs. I don't know if you have any other.
Those are great suggestions. I'm just scrolling through our back catalog to see if there's anything I'm forgetting about.
Aeon Legion, I think, would have been the more serious one, like non-parody one to lean into.
Yeah,
that one, like explicitly just like sword fightery anime stuff, but like at least it didn't have like bad romance subplots, and
it had a strong female character who was kind of just strong on her own, and that was it had some potential. I agree.
I think if you just made it, like I said, like a little bit less like here's a sword fighting school for time cops, and there's sword fighting time cops. It could have had a little bit, again, explicitly like YA kind of stuff there, but just, having the person in dark armor show up with 2 swords at the end was just like a little bit groan inducing in terms of like, oh yeah, okay.
Yeah. There was definitely obviously some stuff that was not great. Sorry, I'm looking through. I'm having trouble. I mean, Too Far might even be up there too for me, honestly. I think that if you just, again, turned the horny knob down on those 6-year-olds a little bit, and maybe made, and again, it wasn't up very high, but having the horny knob even on 1 for a book about 6-year-olds is too high, unless that's somehow important. I don't know. I just think that it had so much potential.
Dialed that back for sure. I could have dialed that back for sure.
So there's some answers.
Yeah. There's so many things to consider, but like I think that's a good little swipe of like things that we think could have done better.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, cool. So what's next? Is there a type of book you would never read? This is also a listener question. There actually is a book in our catalog that I'm not going to tell you the name of because I don't want a patron to recommend it. We became aware of it. Let me check. Where was
I think origin? It was like a Reddit terrible cover post.
Yes, it was from a terrible book Reddit of some kind, not ours, but some other like terrible book covers or titles or something. And there were just so many layers that we couldn't stomach.
Let's just essentially. How would you describe it, Paris?
I can tell you the layers of this shit cake. So your bottom layer is hardcore BDSM and pet play.
Like imprisonment.
Yeah. It goes over the line of play and goes to literal imprisonment. Like, this is not like, oh, there's consent and it's a fun time. No, this is that. Yeah. Forced imprisonment in addition to all that other stuff. I think there was bestiality or suggested bestiality. And there's also a race layer on top of that. Yeah,
it was
just a lot.
We kind of like we were almost ready to like start reading it, and then we both like looked 2 pages in. We were like, we cannot discuss this kind of.
I mean, I think I'm not saying. At the time, we were both just like, this is going to take so much research and careful discussion, and we don't know that any of it can even be funny. Like that's the problem with something with all these layers of toxicity. I mean, if it can't be funny in any way, it's going to be hard for us to read for the show.
Essentially the thing that we definitely won't read is like way over the line hardcore erotica stuff that, you know, is like turbo problematic in so many. We might like in
well,
certain,
no, I was going to say we're recording out of order to take our traditional winter break. So we've recorded the first and second episodes of next season, and we do touch on something that has
in that area, but nowhere near like the one we touched on was 14 pages, so you can't get into much on that one. But like just like the depth of it in that particular thing is something that I don't think we'll touch much. And in terms of like other genres we won't read, I don't know, like engineering textbooks or something.
Oh no, that'd be really interesting, really boring. But I mean, I think instead of type of book, that doesn't necessarily mean genre. We're trying to read books that aren't super long, because there were so many times we'd get locked into these, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 900 page books. And it's like, we read a book and record an episode every 2 weeks. It's a lot to keep on schedule. Yes, it's fun, but we have to make sure things are running on time, and also make sure we have time for the music that we both do, our day jobs, and our partners and friends and other hobbies that we have, like cooking, or what have you. So I would say if there's a type of book we would never read, it's things that are really long. We do make exceptions here and there for patrons, or when we have a hole in the schedule, like a long enough period. So for example, sometimes we'll record several episodes back to back of short books, and then we'll actually have a lot of time to read something longer. So once in a while we'll do longer ones, but we're not going to read, like someone long ago recommended this book that was like almost 1,000 pages. And I was like, we're never going to read that. It's just, I mean, there would have to be a really compelling reason. I guess I won't say ever, but it would be really difficult for us to start reading really long books all the time.
I would agree.
Yeah.
All right, Paris, we're coming up on our last 2 questions here.
Oh, okay. So this I hope this is fun. So this is a question for both of us. So, Chris, describe who and where you are right now. Is this at all who you thought you'd be and where you thought you'd be when we started this podcast in 2015?
It's a pretty good question. I mean, ironically, 2020 is a year where, if I had more opportunity to go out and be social with my friends, I would consider it one of my best years. I'm surviving in my job, which is like one of the first things I'd expect to like be sacrificed in a pandemic like this, which is guitar instruction. I'm doing the kind of gig that I wanted to be doing, like ever since I was in college, essentially. I'm making better money than I ever have on it. Still not like the most I'd ever want, not like the goal I'd like to reach, but like better than I thought I would be doing in 2015. That's for sure. In terms of my art, like absolutely I was just starting to like do Graveborn stuff and like other stuff musically in 2015. Like I started probably like 2013, 2014. But like 2015 is like when I really started cooking, and like, there's definitely plenty of stuff since then that I look back on like, oh, that could have been done better. I should have put more effort into here. I should have considered this. But that growth has been a huge part of it. And where I am now as a musician, of course, I could have been doing better, but every year I feel myself getting sharper and sharper in terms of like, my cycles of practice and creation and, where I sit in terms of that thing. And also in general, in terms of just like my social relationships, I feel like I'm getting better about connecting with people, and, being empathizing with them in a way, and trying, making sure I'm not putting it all on them to reach out to me, and making sure I'm putting the effort in and not expecting others to come to me all the time, which was a problem I had before.
Yeah.
What about you, Paris?
I think that's a good answer, Chris. Or all of those are good answers, I guess. Let's see. Right now. Well, yeah. I mean, it feels almost wrong to say, but this year, like the last year, I would say, or a year and a half, has been... I've had some really positive changes. I think who and where I am right now, I mean, I have a job, like day job, that I really love. I work in data science now, and it's the best job I've ever had. I have the best boss I've ever had. No shade to previous, you're awesome bosses. You're all awesome, but this one's real good. I have great coworkers. Even though there's always going to be some turmoil at work, I would never want to leave this job. I feel like this is a job I want to do, unless I can't imagine a better opportunity really presenting itself, but it would take a lot to make me want to leave this job. The company I work for is got a really good, I work in the nonprofit sector. So, it's got a really good cause, and I love the work that I do. So yeah, I mean, in 2015, I would not guess that I would have such a great job and be so happy with it. Never. Because in 2015, I think I was still working at the aquarium. I think I was still managing people, and it was, oh, what a thankless job, I mean, the aquarium's a good organization. I'm not saying not to support it or anything, but working there was really difficult. Just the way that staff were treated and paid really bad. So I would never guess that 5 years from then, I'd be in the situation that I am. I'm very fortunate.
What about like your concilium and stuff like that?
Yeah, no, I'm getting there. I'm comparing, contrasting each thing I'm going to talk about.
Sorry.
Thanks for ruining my flow. No, I'm kidding. No, it's fine. So anyway, yeah, like Chris was saying, I think we're both incredibly fortunate to still be employed, for now. I mean, who the hell knows what's going to happen next year, but, and to have jobs that we always wanted. Like, I always wanted a job like this, like Chris was saying, and it's really kind of wild to see things like that happen. I mean, and same for like Chris was just mentioning my band, Concilium. I mean, we put out an EP last summer in 2019 that honestly got far more attention and praise than any of us could have dreamed. And, we're a small band and kind of a small subgenre. So it's not, I don't want to sound like I'm self-aggrandizing. I'm not. I'm just saying that I'm really, really grateful for the positive reviews we've gotten and for how pumped people are for our eventual music. I think a big thing to note is if it weren't for that EP and my work with the band, I mean, it's very personally fulfilling, but it's how I met my boyfriend. We both, this is a weird story and I don't want to go too long, but we both were really in love with each other's music, and strangely said as much on different YouTube streams of friends who were mutual friends. So that's weird. And then, we fell in love with each other. I know that's kind of a crazy thing for romance, hatred, Paris to say, but it is something that happened this year. It's why I'm in Minneapolis right now. And that's, I mean, I would never, ever, ever think that any of that would ever happen to me. Especially in 2015. Wasn't a good year for me. A lot of the years after that weren't great either. So it's like, yeah, I just feel like, yeah, 2020 is fucking wild in a lot of good ways as well as bad. Otherwise, I mean, I would never imagine that Chris and I would still be doing this show.
Absolutely. And that kind of like segues into our final question here.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
I mean, especially since, Chris and I stopped doing the show because we got into a fight.
Yep.
We were not friends.
We never really revealed that for like a good portion of this, but the reason there was a Terrible Book Club hiatus is it was a big old fight and we had fallen out.
We did. We just, being roommates was just not working out, and I moved out. And I mean, I think I'm a big enough person to say that was a huge mistake, although I learned from it. So I don't think I'd change it, because if I hadn't done it then, I would have just made that mistake later, Sure. But, yeah, Chris and I had a falling out. We were not talking for months.
A full year, I would say.
Was it a full year? Jesus Christ.
It was close to a year.
It was a long time. Yeah, I mean, it must have been not quite a year, because I remember we were planning to come back on air before January of 2017, obviously. But anyway, we finally were like, we're like both ready to admit that we were wrong and stupid about having this dumb fight. This is, yeah. So anyway, we decided, we should really do the show again because it was a really great thing that people really liked, and we stopped it for dumb reasons, instead of just working out our differences like adults. We were just like, man, we're not going to talk to each other, which is fucking immature. I'm honestly surprised at both of us.
Yeah.
for how shitty that was. But anyway, both ends,
it had stupid, like, we're not going to get into the details of what exactly happened, but like, it's just
dumb roommate shit,
Yeah,
it's
like really in the end,
stupid dumb roommate shit. And anyway, I think that, my question is, how has our friendship changed over the course of the podcast? And I think we've become even better friends as the show has gone on.
Somehow
we do this all we talk about the terrible books we read. We have to think about sometimes really hard topics together and pick each other's brains about stuff. And it's really nice to have a friendship like that. I have other really good friends like Chris's roommate is my other best friend. And, but I do think that kind of always working out these kind of logic problems with someone and analyzing stuff with another person makes you a lot closer. So I don't know.
Just like working out logistic stuff. Mm-hmm. Like, that's like a thing that causes so many friendships to fall apart is when like you can have a casual conversation, but then as soon as you start bringing like spreadsheets and income and work division into it.
That's
like,
true.
Surviving through that is also like a bond.
Yeah. And I think that our friendship in this podcast has actually improved our relationships with like our partners.
I would agree.
And our other friends and how we kind of manage our own lives, because the show makes it forced, like Chris was saying, like spreadsheets and scheduling, it forces us to be really on top of things. And I don't think it makes it less fun. It makes us more responsible, and it makes us consider, the other people in our lives who are, arguably more important than the podcast as much as we love it.
Sure.
We've definitely had to make decisions to cancel recordings or jumble things around because our various partners needed things or we had something important medically or whatever. And yeah, I think overall, our friendship has changed by becoming better. And I think that has made us better people in turn.
Isn't that what a friendship should be, Paris?
Yeah, it should. So wow, let's end on that fucking note. If anyone in the
episodes,
chat,
Paris.
Oh, no, false. Get your polar. What are you doing with that Coke?
I'm sorry. Excuse me. Only life-giving water.
Only the life-giving flavor.
Pomegranate apple.
Cheers.
Clink. Love you, dude.
Love you, too. If anyone who is here on Twitch would like to ask us questions in the chat, feel free. We'll hang out for a few more minutes before we close it out with our patron rundown.
Before we do that, while you're cooking up your questions for us, why don't we have a little segment here where I would like to talk about our goals for, the next stretch here, 2021.
Yeah.
We did really well this year. I think we've cleared 50K downloads across like all the platforms that we're on for the year. And like, that's pretty awesome, I would say. I would have never imagined that I got anywhere close to that kind of number. Like, maybe you could stretch it out like, oh, it's only over a year that you got that. But whatever, that's like crazy for just two friends just
to stress this. Like, we're not part of a podcasting network. We don't have backing. We don't have ads. We don't have anything. We're just two fucking people doing this. Like, and we're not a lot of podcasts become famous because their hosts are famous. We're not famous. Like, we don't have followings of any kind.
Our music doesn't even help that at all.
No,
I would say.
Yeah, it really doesn't. So, the fact that this has gained any traction at all, plus any in 2020 is just mind-blowing. And we owe it to all of you who come to these things,
exactly.
Who listen every 2 weeks, or, maybe you listen once a month, whatever. Any time you spend on Terrible Book Club has helped us grow the show. And it's great that we're at a point where we're self-sufficient. Like, our patron donations help us fund the cost of books, both physical and electronic, depending on what it is. Our hosting, like media fees, like sounds and stuff. Like, so we have podcast hosting, and then we also have to host stuff for Patreon, and all of that's paid for. I mean, it's not a lot. Like, we're not rolling in, and we're not making a profit on the show, but that was never the intent. I feel the fact that we're financially self-sufficient is an incredible achievement for two random assholes from Boston who,
Yeah.
you know,
And that's thanks to you.
Thanks to you
out there. So thank you, everyone who's shared the show, become a patron, told a friend about it, gave us a review or sent us a nice message. It means more than anything to me, and it gives me the will to continue reading these terrible books and to try and expand the operation just a little bit more. So next year, I would like to try and reach 100K downloads. That's my dream for next year.
I think that's very reasonable. I think we might be able to do it. We'll see.
Yeah, and we could do that with some further help from you guys. Just let people know.
Yeah, honestly, just telling people about it is great. Darn, what was I going to say? I've lost my train of thought.
I think we can just go straight to thanking the patrons.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like we're getting any extra chat questions here today.
Yeah, that's okay. I mean, also, if anybody has questions afterward, you can just email us at terriblebookclub@gmail.com, and we'll get back to you in a different format. Or you can also contact us on Instagram, Facebook, Goodreads, or Twitter if you want to converse with us in any of those ways. It's also fine. But for now, we should thank our patrons who make this all possible. So thank you to Dari, Greg, Will, Veronica, Dee, Lynn, Sinya, Yakub, Bobby Blackcat, Jensina, Mayo Cat, Elliot, Kieran, Martin, Jay, Scott, Luchek J again, and CTAP1. Thank you all for supporting the show.
Thank you so much. Round of applause for you, my undying love and support. Thank you very much for helping us continue this operation where we dive further and further into the void of terrible books.
Yeah, I mean, like Chris was saying, every time we get a message from someone, it makes me want to read the next book with even more fervor. It's great to hear from everyone who listens to the show. If you want to help support the show, you can also become a patron. We have tiers of $1, $5, or $10 a month, depending on what you would like from us. $1 just gets you a little name shout out. $5 gets you access to all of our bonus content. And then at $10 a month, you can force us to read a book of your choosing once a year. You can also subscribe and follow us on YouTube or any of the other platforms I mentioned, like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or Goodreads. You can also leave a review somewhere. That's cool. But like we said before, just tell people about us. That's fun. I don't know that I have anything else to say other than
Paris,
it's been the best year so far for TBC. And I think the best year for both of us as people, which is nothing short of miraculous.
Yeah.
So,
all right, Paris. Well, bon voyage for now, I suppose. We'll be seeing you back at a regularly scheduled time. We'll be taking a little bit of a recording break after this, but you will still be receiving Terrible Book Club every other Tuesday.
Yep, until
I can keep up with the editing. I will. It'll be easy and breezy for me.
Yeah, until we tire of this. So, again, if you want to contact us, feel free. But otherwise, thank you so much for joining us on this Saturday afternoon. We hope you were here for most of it, if not all of it. And we look forward to delivering more terrible reviews to you in the future.
All right. Bye, Paris.
All right. Bye, Chris. Bye, everybody.